Welcome to the Big Week in Gaming podcast. And what do you know? It's been a big week in gaming. I'm integot for episode 50 on Sunday, the 27th of June, 2021. As always, I'm joined by the official P3 nominated and approved Xbox Hall of Famer and number one challenger to the mantle of the greatest Xbox RPG player in the world, Swinny K. Costello.
Hello, and I feel absolutely awesome.
Everyone is awesome. And the game-loving, grind-hating, pretend to quit coffee drinking, continue to drink coffee, gamer, anti-gamer, and very much interrupter-in-chief, Mike.
Sup, yo.
In this week's show, we'll be discussing the big Kojima and Blue Box Studios conspiracy that is taking the internet by storm, my review of Ratchet Clank Rift Apart, and on the back of wrapping up Game of Some Other Year 2011, we are deciding the next year, some other year.
Oh, God.
For the Game of Some Other Year. But it's going to be in the 90s, so you have to tune to the end of the show for that. As always, if you want to hit us up on socials, it's Bigwig Pod. And Swinny, we're going to be doing another live stream.
Yes, because they're good fun. Yeah, we're going to be doing the...
this is my seamless hand.
No, I didn't know you were expecting me to explain what it was. I didn't expect that. All right, so we're doing the Sakurai... We're doing the Sakurai presentation for Smash Bros. Ultimate of Kazuya Mishima on the Monday the 28th of June. At what time for us? Well, actually, it's the 29th for us, isn't it? It's midnight for us.
Well, yeah, so I'll run through it. So it's 7 a.m. PDT, 10 a.m. EDT, British Summer Time or Standard Time, 3 p.m. And then for us, it's midnight that day. So... But we'll log in on that Monday, really. We'll start at least 5 minutes before. So we'll stream it on YouTube, but I'll try to get it on Twitch and Facebook as well. I'm tweaking our settings so that we might be able to simulcast across the internet. That'd be nice fun. Quick bit of community news, actually. I don't know if you know about this, Mike, but you know how we were covering Playdate a few times? Mm-hmm. One of the guys who, Greg Melitek, he actually commented on one of our videos and addressed Swinny's question.
Yes.
Does the Playdate have an alarm clock functionality with the stereo dock? And it doesn't.
And what's the answer? It doesn't.
It doesn't. But he said they might build it if people are interested.
Yeah. So, yes, we are very much interested. I mean, I know he's not going to probably see this or hear this, but...
I never know.
Yes,
but
we want one.
They're a very cool company. I like the way that they run their business.
Yeah.
And, if they ever do, I hope to God they have some kind of Easter egg about Swinny in the alarm clock functionality.
Swinny alarm.
I am trying to learn 3D modeling, but I think the idea that I would love to see is that you have the Playdate on the dock, and then you use the crank to set the alarm. So you actually go,
wow,
yeah, and then you set it. How sick would that be?
It would be annoying, but really sick.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, no. You know what? Maybe not. Maybe it'd be kind of it'd be fun.
Dude, try it. I'm a huge believer. If you have the crank, you got to crank everything.
Cool.
You got to keep cranking at it.
You got to crank it totally.
And there's a correction, Swinny.
Yeah. So last week we were talking about Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, and I mentioned, imagine what Doom Train's going to look like in Final Fantasy VI, and shameful. That Final Fantasy VI, the infamous boss that you can suplex, the evil train boss, is actually called the Phantom Train, not Doom Train. Doom Train was the Final Fantasy VIII Guardian Force summon.
Cool. Thanks for that bit of information, nerd.
On that segment, it's not
It's important.
It's not necessarily a correction, but it's probably more color, because we were speaking about the Chrono Trigger Steam release and how bad it was. It was terrible at launch. They did improve it after the launch, and there's an ability to go back to the original graphics in Chrono Trigger on Steam.
They did, but our point still stands. Yeah. Like, that was a mess when it launched,
Yeah, and then it's like, why are they doing it like that? Why can't they have it on consoles? And I think, I game on PC, but I still don't understand why you wouldn't have it on a console that is specifically designed to play games, and people would buy it.
Yeah.
So this week, Swinny, what has your week in gaming been?
So my week in gaming has been primarily just one game, which is Borderlands 3, which I'll get to in a second. I did try out some of the Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam 2011 games, which we'll be talking a bit about later.
Cool.
But nice. Yeah, with Borderlands 3, that's a game I started last week, but I was only in the initial couple of areas. So now I'm well into the game, or probably, I reckon, about 70% of the way through. So I feel like I can, give my just general thoughts so far about how it is. Obviously, I haven't got to end game or anything, which is very important in the Borderlands stuff. And I know they've done a lot of work there for this one over even Borderlands 2 and things like that. But honestly, with Borderlands 3, I didn't know what to expect, because from Borderlands 1 to Borderlands 2, there was a lot of improvements, but the gameplay still felt very much on the same level. And that's probably the biggest change of Borderlands 3, is that they really did overhaul the gameplay.
How so? Please explain.
So it's, I was about to. So the gunplay feels very different. It feels way better than it did before, which is obviously great. It just feels
it felt pretty good before, right?
Yeah, everything.
I love 1 and 2.
Everything just feels really snappy. Just I don't know. There's something about it. Just feels like they put a lot of effort into just making sure that it feels like I love the way, as you said, I love the way Borderlands 2 and pre-sequel and even Borderlands 1 felt, but this just feels like they kind of optimized it more for like modern sensibilities with the way that it plays. Mm-hmm. But my favorite thing about it is actually the movement mechanics they added, and some of it's completely like superfluous, but it's just really cool. One of them being the sliding mechanic. So like some games these days, if you press crouch while you're in the middle of a sprint, you'll do a slide. But it just feels like Borderlands has always been a super stylish game. Not to the level of something like a Bulletstorm, but not too far off. But just even like there's an enemy behind cover and I'll run past the cover and slide and then shoot the enemy as I'm sliding. Things like that. Nice. It just feels really, really cool. And they added mantling to be able to climb up things in this, and it actually, I think it adds a lot more variety to the exploration. So they'll put things that are on top of something, and it's almost like a
puzzle,
climbing puzzle, to get up there, to figure out how to get up and stuff. It doesn't feel, that's definitely a little rough, and I think that's an area that they can improve in the next one. But yeah, I think when it comes to the actual, like, a lot of people, Borderlands is all about the guns, and I think that's another area that they've really excelled in with this one, and they've added so much variety to the guns, and a lot of them also have secondary fire modes now, which is a first for the series that I can tell of, unless they added something pre-sequel that I've forgotten about. But basically, you can swap, from simple things like, okay, you've got an assault rifle will be able to swap between like full auto or burst fire or something like that, to guns that have two different elemental attacks. So you have like a corrosion or an electric attack, and you can swap between them using the secondary fire toggle, which is really, really neat. It opens up a lot more options. Even things like there's guns that, and they played around with this a bit in the past, but there's guns where when you reload, you'll throw it out and it'll explode, and that's always been that's always been a hallmark of. I forget the. Hideo or something. There's a specific gun maker in the game that does that. But in this one, like, I got a legendary that when it blew up, it then sent off 4 little rockets that then chased the enemies to shoot the enemies and things like that. There's like one where you'll go to reload, it will throw it out and it will become a little turret. And it gave me like the perfect dark vibes, and it's really, really cool what they've done there.
Yeah, because for Integot's sake, it's not just that they have 1 billion guns as the trailer showed, which is just, a variation of exactly the same thing. They have some really cool, unique stuff. And even within a gun type, for example, I remember I had a shotgun and the actual pellet spread was a smiley face. And it was something in the description, but I'm sure everyone noticed it when they used it, but until I actually saw it next to a wall and I'm like, what the hell is that? And I looked up close, I'm like, wow. And then I just started shooting walls just to see, and it was just constant smiley faces everywhere. It was a cool little thing like that.
Yeah, number 2, you could get a gun that shot axes that then exploded when they hit enemies. It's just really cool the stuff they've done. My favorite's still the pre-sequel gun that you can get as part of a quest. That it says bogan Aussie sayings as each time you shoot it. Cool, it's great. That's cool. But in terms of some of the stuff that I guess I'm not feeling as much, so and this is definitely a me thing. So some of the maps I feel are a bit too big. So I'm not talking about the maps where the kind of like the big open areas that you get access to vehicles. It's more the on foot areas that you go into, and they just take a lot longer to get around. And generally speaking, there's no way to fast travel within those areas. There's only always a fast travel at the beginning of the area. So if you want to quit out of the game at any point, then it's like, well, you don't want to, because then you're going to have to essentially tread through that whole map again. So I think that I thought Borderlands 2 and even pre-sequel were a lot better with kind of keeping that stuff to a bit more confined and smaller. Like sometimes something, that's a bit more concise is a better experience. And I think that so far some of the maps are a bit too big.
This is becoming like your Cyberpunk 2077 banter, where it became like a 10-minute review of the game.
Oh, I really want to talk about this game. So
we can do a review of it.
I'm not going to review a game that's like 2 years old. We do a podcast and we talk about games, Integot. So I love also how they weave a lot of the older characters into the story. It's been a hallmark of the series now where basically each game will have a new set of Vault Hunters, and then those Vault Hunters, who are kind of very bare bones characters, the next game will become fully fleshed characters as part of the story, and it's cool to see that continue on. So, but honestly, I really want to play more, but I can't, unfortunately.
Why not?
So they added this update like yesterday, this big update that adds crossplay to the game, which is great.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Adds crossplay, not
without PlayStation.
Without PlayStation, everyone else but PlayStation. They increased the level cap, they made events repeatable, some stuff that sounds really cool. Unfortunately, it broke my fucking game, so I can't play it properly.
What do you mean broke it? What happened?
Well, look, broke is probably going a little extreme. It's playable, but what happens is every 30 seconds, I'll get like a 1 to 2 second hitch, like a lag. That just makes it like unplayable. Like this game is such an action-packed game.
Yeah,
and it's running. Otherwise, it's running. Like absolute 60 frames a second, no hitches, and then suddenly you'll in the middle of a gunfight, you'll get like this. You'll pause for a second, and then you'll turn around. You're like, and sometimes it hits you in the middle of a jump, and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake. So a lot of people are having this issue. It's been an issue with the game in the past that has had various fixes, but it seems like the update just introduced this issue for a lot of people. So it's quite annoying. So I didn't plan on it, but because of that, I started bloody Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I'm not going to talk about that. But
so all right, let's go 20-minute review of Mass Effect.
Hey, are we talking about games? Or are we talking about games?
We're talking about games.
Hey, we're talking about a game.
We're talking about a pizza.
I said last week, hey,
he's got a 9 a.m. Domino's pizza coming up.
That's right. Yeah. Let's throw Swinny under the bus. So Swinny is getting targeted ads to order pizza at 9 a.m. on a Sunday.
Which I must clarify, I've never ordered pizza at 9 a.m. on a Sunday.
They think you will, mate. They think you will.
They know you better than you know yourself.
They're selling $3 pizza and it's costing them $1 to send you that targeted ad. So,
and it's something I just need to say something that you cut me off from saying is that I gave up my time last week to talk about Borderlands 3 to talk about it this week, so I wanted to take more time to do it. So, screw you, Hideo.
Well, hang on. You don't give up your time by just taking it again. You're just doubling your time, you mean?
No, if you go back to last week, I'm like, I'm not going to talk about Borderlands 3. There's not enough time. I'm going to talk about it next week. So I did. So screw you. How's your week in gaming been, Integot?
I've been flat out with work, and also I'm in Sydney, so we're locked down here now.
Yeah, so you should just have more opportunity to play games now.
No, it's so I don't want to get. I don't want to get too much into it, but my work. There's something wrong with my work laptop, so I can't access my email anymore. Like during work hours.
Anyway, so what's the difference?
Yeah, right. And now it's like, oh, maybe just work at 7 a.m. and like after 6 p.m. I'm like, oh yeah, that's going to work really well with the family. So I actually might just take leave from work for a week or a few days or something like that.
Plenty of time to play games.
Outside of that, I've actually been playing through Picross because I just have so many Picross games on my Switch, and it's a good chill game. And then also Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I will, it's not really something I can talk about now because we will cover it in a couple of weeks' time. I think like mid-July, we're covering it for the Donkey Kong 40th anniversary, and then also that's going to conclude our Donkey Kong Country retrospective. Very cool game. Really looking forward to talking about just the quirks of the game as well. Outside of that, I've just been really keen to play some games, but I just haven't had the time, unfortunately. How about you, Mike?
Metro Exodus.
Oh, Metro Exodus. Is that because of Stalker that you got back into that game?
I wasn't going to talk much about it, but no. I actually started playing it before the announcement. That's why I got doubly excited about Stalker.
Okay.
Yes.
What really are you playing it on?
PC.
Okay.
So it's a fantastic game. Highly recommended. It surprisingly doesn't seem as long as I thought it would be, especially with the way it's structured and stuff. And it's good because it's without spoiling anything, it's 3 separate maps that are quite bite-sized chunks, if that makes sense. Like they're open areas, but they're not giant open areas. So I think to Swinny's point earlier about Borderlands, I think it's just the right amount. Really cool atmosphere, great graphics, interesting story. So yeah.
Okay.
Do recommend.
Anything else? That's it?
No, that's pretty much it. Oh, and Metro Last Light on the Switch. Just because might as well do the whole Metro thing. So Metro Last Light was the second in the series.
It sounds like you're saying Metroid half the time. I don't know if that's just me.
Metro, sorry. No, it's just the way I pronounce my shitty words, being a filthy immigrant. So the original Metro 2033 had the sequel, which was Metro Last Light, and then they had Metro Exodus. And both the original and Metro Last Light are pretty linear, sort of typical FPS kind of games to a large extent, whereas Exodus is more open world-ish, but it's not like a full open world. It's just different areas that are big. And it's really, if you guys can pick it up, I don't know if Nintendo still have a huge sale on at the moment, but usually when they have those giant sales, they have almost every game on special. So that's probably on special too. It's incredible how it looks on a bloody Switch.
Yeah, you know what game? Because
amazing.
They had the DLC.
Like 30.
The DLC just came out with Doom Eternal. That looks insane on the Switch. Like
it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
How does that run? And then
I don't know.
You know, Hyrule Warriors hitches, and runs at like 15 frames. That's so bad.
Yeah. The effects and everything.
Just because I'm doing this live, so Metro Last Light Redux is $3.69 in Australia right now.
Grab it.
And Metro 2033 Redux is $12.93.
So the original is more expensive than the sequel. Huh. Grab the sequel for $3. Totally worth it.
They're both the lowest price they've ever been on the Switch. So very good timing, Mike. And it actually, if you look at the chart of the discounts, it's just going down this way. Sorry, I should say.
I don't know how much less than $3 you're going to get that game for, though.
Yeah, I think there's always a threshold. I'm a cheap bastard, so there's always
I would say $3 is by far an amazing threshold. Even if you only play it for 10 minutes just to check out the graphical fidelity of that game.
In particular, they've been discounting them at the exact same amount at the exact same time, but for some reason, this is the first time that one's been heavily discounted over the other. The only thing is the sale ends in 13 hours. So by the time that most people would have heard this, it's over.
Gonna know. Oh well, sorry, peeps.
Don't worry, it's $36.95 for each one. Is it worth that?
Probably.
So then it's definitely worth $3.69.
Well, I just think they're great games as far as first-person shooters, and surprisingly ran pretty well on a Switch. I mean, it's 30, but it's solid, and I was really surprised at how good it looked.
Yeah. All right. Well,
anyway, enough of that.
Why don't we get into our first bit of news? And we're opening the accounts this week with the Kojima conspiracy. Or the blue box, blue balls. So, okay, what we'll do is, and first up, I'll say a huge thanks to the Reddit user, I'm Not Paul Paulson. So he wrote this 4,500 plus word essay of every single sort of little snippet data point. We're obviously not going to cover all of that. And I've also added some of my own in, but it's probably, I guess, want to cover, what's going on with this game, Abandoned, and the speculation around the internet, and just more the hard, concrete facts rather than some of the rumors or, people sort of saying, oh, what do you think of what this person's saying? And then I think we'll loop back at the end and just kind of say, well, what do we think is going on here? Like, do we actually think it's something or nothing? So straight off from the bat. So Sony on their PlayStation blog announced this indie title called it Abandoned. This was back in April this year. Really came from left field. No one had ever heard of this game before. And the director of the game being Hassan Karaman. So someone that we'd never heard of. He's from the Netherlands. We'll go back to Hassan and then we'll quickly get into the Netherlands quite shortly. So if you actually look at the actual trailer, it's kind of like nothing to it, really, from what I remember or see in this trailer.
It's actually I read a bit extra about it, and it's from my understanding just some basic assets from Unreal Engine.
Yeah, and so there are some people who are actually on the Unreal Engine forums. They're private forums. You have to sign an NDA. And this will be later picked up in the Schreier article. Certainly there is someone called Hassan Karaman who's asking questions about Unreal Engine quite a lot over the last 3 or so months. So yeah, this came out, and I think the big thing is that a lot of people sort of saw this and was like, oh, this is a bit janky, a bit of a asset flip, but kind of also has a bit of a PT Silent Hills-y kind of vibe to it. So at this stage, you sort of just really had like a lot of speculation on the internet. And then people started to like try to connect dots already at this point, right? So, you know, when you look at Hassan Karaman, you go, oh, it's from the Netherlands. Okay, interesting. You cannot find almost anything about this person. All right, like no one's come out and said, oh, yes, I'm friends with Hassan, right? And then people started going, oh, hang on a second. It kind of looks a little bit PT. The person's from the Netherlands. Well, what else is in the Netherlands? Well, you go Guerrilla Games. So Guerrilla Games, the folks who are behind a Horizon Zero Dawn series, well, you know, that game in the Horizon series now, and Killzone as well, they're based in the Netherlands. And what's interesting about that is that Kojima is now, you know, sort of in bed with those folk because they provide the technology for Kojima. So you go, okay, there's an interesting little connection there with the Netherlands. Going on, so far, have we got you, Swinny?
Yeah.
Now,
He's hooked.
Another thing that people were pointing to, and there's so many other things about Jeff Keighley that you can kind of like point to about this, but he does talk about a lot of random indie games, a lot of games, but it is quite interesting that, you know, him being very close to Hideo Kojima, like besties with him, that when this actual, you know, trailer got teased back in April, like almost instantly he posted a little reply saying, that's interesting. And there's all these little things from Jeff just around this game where he's sort of like, you know, that's kind of interesting. And kind of goes into the next one where it's like, why even people thinking that Hideo Kojima, why would he set up a fake studio, fake person, try to announce a game and then flip it on people and maybe announce a survival horror game? Maybe it doesn't have to be Silent Hill. Well, he's done it before. He's literally done the exact same thing before.
Done it before.
Yeah,
but it was pretty obvious last time. So
well, last time was a bit different as well because he had a press event. Konami. I was almost trying to merge the two together. They had a press event as well, so everyone knew it was Metal Gear Solid. But then they had this trailer, and the only reason why I bring Jeff Keighley up again is because Jeff Keighley helped in this scheme and scam to actually announce this, and you know, in on the joke.
So fake, yeah, obviously, but you could clearly tell it was a joke.
Yeah, and then also like Joachim is an anagram of Kojima, which we'll kind of get to a little bit later as well. Yeah. So, you know, like there's a bit of a history there. Then what we have is Blue Box. So Blue Box, I think everyone at that point is kind of aware, like this is bubbling up since April, getting a little bit of legs, you know, and then it wasn't really until this tweet, you know, a few weeks ago in June. And I remember seeing this tweet and they're basically saying, oh, look, it's not going to be called Abandoned. It's going to be called something else. And then they said first letter S and then last letter L. Now everyone is like, wait, is this Silent Hill? Like, what's going on here? I think this is the point where people just like started going insane. And then you've got the, you know, the Blue Box conspiracy subreddit just going off and having thousands of members. And, you know, you can even see, you know, the amount of likes and everything like this post got. And then they deleted it. They deleted it and issued this apology saying that they have no relation to Konami, you know, we've got nothing to do with Kojima. This is nothing to do with Silent Hill. So it's almost like, oh my God, this is getting too many legs. This is really worrying. And then probably at this point as well, so around sort of mid-June, is when some of the bigger reporters in the industry started to look at this and started to sort of go, well, what's going on here? And some of them getting very convinced as to, it is like a real thing. So one fact, let's just say it's a fact, right? Because this is true. If you take Hideo, so Hideo Kojima's first name, and put it into translation, like Google Translate, it literally comes up in Turkish as Karaman. Karaman being Hasan Karaman's name, which is kind of like an incredible coincidence if it is just purely a coincidence. And I didn't really even believe this because I know that people can be quite sneaky. So I was like, I got to just check this myself. And it's legit. Like Hideo translates into Karaman. The other one is that Karaman, and this has been found to have been the case, that his PSN profile is called Sneaky Warrior. Now, I think this is a stretch, but people go, well, Sneaky Warrior, what is Metal Solid Snake? He's uses stealth and he's a warrior. He's a sneaky warrior.
Okay, that's a bit of a stretch.
That's a big stretch. That's a big stretch. And there are games on his profile that you can't actually play on PSN. It's sort of like not listed anywhere.
Oh, he's a developer.
Yeah, well, he's a developer. So there's like genuine points there. Okay, he must be a developer. Then, just a few days after the whole Silent Hills teasing, the S and the L kind of component, he actually, they came out and said, okay, they're going to have a PS5 trailers app where it's going to show the trailer of the game and more about the game. And people are like very confused by this stage because this is a developer no one's ever heard of. They've never made games. It's a total indie. And then they're going to have an app, which there are no other apps on the PS5. It's games. So it's so odd that they're going to have some special early access thing that no one else can have. Almost as if you do this with someone who is huge, right? Not like some little indie studio. At this point, this is where, like, just a few days later, Jason Schreier, who went from being like, okay, I'm 100% convinced this is Kojima, to being like, I'm not so sure. He's actually interviewed Hasan Karaman. And, if you go through this article, like, ultimately it's kind of like there's more questions at the end of it. Like,
I think that's what he said, that it's left with more questions than answers now.
He believes, and I think everyone believes, that this person's a real person, that there's a real studio, but there's so many questions about how do they have so many people working on this game? They can't really prove it's not like a Kojima thing, or it's not like Bloober Team or like some other big studio or like some developer that's out there that's making even potentially a Silent Hill, reboot, remake, whatever it has to be. But I think everyone's kind of pretty sure that it's actually him. But then also you go on LinkedIn, he's on LinkedIn, and then there were other employees on LinkedIn. But then people started looking at it and were like, oh, wait, these are stock photos of people. Like, they're not actual real people. Right?
Really?
Yeah. And then now Hasan, so this is only like last week, he's actually posted a video. So one was like, hey, I'm a real person. I got nothing to do with Hideo Kojima. Then on the day that they were going to announce, and look at the time as well. Like, this is midnight exactly. This is not even like off by 1 minute. It's like 100% exactly at midnight that, hey, we can't publish the trailers app. It's going to be delayed until August. Now, like, so that's kind of like the bulk of the evidence. These are things that are true, that you can verify. There's lots of speculation, stuff like that. Swinny, Mike, what do we think when we piece all this stuff together?
So it could go so many different ways. On one hand, it could be a legit Hideo kind of crazy little long running thing he's trying to do, and Karaman is just a persona. It's a hired actor. Could be a real game developer, but it could be someone that he's working with. On the other hand, massive coincidence. The guy maybe just wanted to get something out. Started by saying, let's say, the wrong thing, and all of a sudden it blew up, and he's now panicking, thinking, "What the hell am I going to do with what I've created now?" I'm hoping for. That's what I think is probably the case. By the way, I think that there's no conspiracy here. I think
so. You don't think it's anything to do with Kojima or Silent Hill?
I don't think so. But if I was Kojima, I'd be jumping on this bandwagon and I'd be like, all right, let's make this a real thing. And then now actually getting onto it if he's not on it.
That'd be funny.
So I don't know. My gut feel is it's probably not a real thing.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't know. Like it's one of those really weird ones. I'm not huge on conspiracy theories or anything, as you guys know, but I feel like it could go either way still. It really could. It could be like a really well thought through ploy by Kojima to just get hype around this game.
Yeah.
And to remind people it's still there in a really sneaky, crazy, clever way. Or it could just be one developer that kind of said a little too much down the wrong path, set expectations, people jumped on the bandwagon, all of a sudden it's crazy. So I'm more inclined to think that, but to be honest, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. Swinny?
Yeah, so look, honestly, this whole thing has reminded me of something, and let me finish what I'm going to say before you say anything, because it's important for me to say the whole thing.
Of course, as long as it's not about Borderlands.
What? Okay. So this reminded me, like looking at this Reddit, was a blue box conspiracy or whatever, and just like the tenuous links and the really coincidental links that people are finding. Some of them are so ridiculous, like people saying, the game was meant to come out or was cancelled on this date and they've got 2727 in their name, and it's like some of the stuff's ridiculous. But what it reminded me of was, and I'm definitely going to be careful about what I say here, it was a certain conspiracy that cropped up a few years ago that had to do with fast food and eventually politics. And I
actually don't know what he's talking about, but all right.
I don't know either.
I'm not going to say it because it could potentially be a flagged word. But basically,
is this like a pizza shop?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
In the early
it's fine to say
days,
pizza shop, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. In the early days, it's like it was just this like intriguing car wreck to watch this conspiracy unfold. And then it started getting dangerous, and it's like, okay, well then, this thing is ridiculous. But in those early days, it really reminded me of people just wanting a mystery to unfold. And it's honestly the way I go back and forth on this. Like early on, I'm like, this has got to be Kojima. But then like a lot more of the stuff has come out, and the fact that I don't know, like to me, Kojima's done this before. And Kojima generally doesn't like to repeat himself with a lot of what he does. So, and to me, this would be repeating himself to a much more bigger
he made a lot
extent.
of Metal Gear games.
No, but like his approach to those games have always been different, and like the way that he's been sneaky in that stuff has always been different. So I do think what this is there were some interesting links that people found. And this developer, I'm distracted by that GIF on the screen. And this developer has taken advantage of it. Unfortunately, is probably got the hopes up of people. Like, there's going to be people disappointed out of this, 100%.
Oh yeah.
But I really hope that, look, this game could be an absolute trash fire of a game if it is a real game by an independent developer, but I hope that people actually give it a chance if it turns out Kojima isn't behind it. So I'm currently on the side of the fence of I don't think this is him.
Well, so there's on that blue box conspiracy subreddit, there's now there's multiple teams, but the main ones are Team Fake and Team Real. So you both are on Team Fake?
Yeah, I'm on Team Fake.
Yeah, look, I'm on Team Fake too. 100%, the game is not just from an indie developer, like one dude with like friends and subcontractors is what he said. There's something more to this game that's like weird and something going on. And that might be just like there's Tencent money behind it, or he's working with an existing studio that they just can't talk about.
But there's
at this
an NDA,
stage.
so yeah.
Yeah, or there's like some kind of like IP attached to it, but it's not Silent Hill. It's something else, right? And it's maybe like some B tier one that we don't really care about or know even about. But there is something going on here. Look, could it be Kojima? The only thing that like really, because if you go through it all, I think it's so speculative and so like you want to see the connections. The one that I remember when I was on Twitter and it came up, that threw me was the one where it was like, oh, you take Hideo's name and it literally translates into Karaman. I was like, wow, that is like an amazing coincidence. Just given the fact that already at that stage, everyone was like, oh, I reckon Kojima's behind it. And then what are the chances that just coincidentally these two people have translated the same name? Because it means hero in both like, Turkish and then Japanese. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of an odd coincidence. The rest of it, I just think is so speculative. And it'd be cool if it was, but as I said, I think there's something more to it. I just don't think it's Kojima.
I'm looking forward to finding out though over the next few months.
And you know what? Like, I think I get where people are coming from. There's some people who are so big on this that this guy's made a terrible error. It's not going to be a Kojima game and people are going to be so pissed about it. Dude, like if you make a great game, right? Like you make Among Us, no one plays it for 2 years and then just some random streamer starts playing it and the game takes off. Like getting marketing for games is so hard. Getting eyeballs on your game is so freaking hard.
Yeah.
I more power to this guy, man. Lean into it. I almost think, yeah, sure, maybe you piss off 10, 20% of the people. No one was going to talk about this game. Let's be real. Abandoned. I remember when it came up, Swinny. Do you remember when it came up?
Yeah.
And we were just like, oh, okay, like, yeah, not my thing or whatever. And then that was the end of it. I don't think we'd ever talk about it again, even when it got released. But with all this stuff, we've got a whole segment about it,
I think because there's like tons of horrible games get released on all the platforms. Like people bring up The Life of Black Tiger on the PS4 or whatever, or PS3, I can't remember. But that was another example of like a really bad indie asset flip game that somehow got a trailer on the PlayStation YouTube channel and turned out just to be this absolute train wreck. So there's games like this. But
we're not saying that this game is that.
No, but I'm saying, but the trailer is very reminiscent of that in terms of, okay, it's using pre-built assets and it just looks like a concept rather than an actual game. But the thing for me with this is that I hear some people, I've read some comments like, oh, this guy is like so bad at PR and marketing. It's like, no, it's a complete opposite.
I know, I agree.
Like these,
but I don't know how much of it is intentional. Is the thing.
No, but the thing is, like, people clearly don't understand the point of PR. Like, you need to get people talking about you.
Yeah,
you know. So.
Yeah, dude. So it's like the famous saying: "There is no such thing as bad PR." Like I kind of get that. Like outside of, I guess these days, doing something that will get you cancelled, as long as this guy's not getting himself cancelled, he's fine. He's fine. And you know what? No one can find an internet presence of him. So maybe he's already 5 steps ahead of everyone. You can't cancel me if there's nothing to cancel. No, I totally agree. I think like if we're going to have our, we are at the end of the year, the big awards, like as far as like marketing stunts or whatever, and hopefully we'll know by then more about this game. It's got to be the contender for, marketing of the year, PR. Yeah, for sure. For like the amount of money that I'm sure is in this game versus the amount of, eyeballs that are on it, it's huge.
Well, it's a better PR stunt than Sniper Ghost Warriors contracts this week.
Yeah, we're not going to cover that, but yeah, that's true. I don't know if you saw about that, Mike, but yeah,
I have not.
You should check it out. It's quite funny.
Okay.
All right, well, let's move into our next bit of news. So Windows 11 got announced during the week. It did, unfortunately, for Microsoft get leaked the week prior, but we do know now a lot more about it. And it's good news for gamers. There's
games.
Yes. There's quite a funny little clip of Sarah Bond, who she's come up pretty much everything, like with Bethesda and all this other kind of stuff. Where she's just clipped saying games. She's just constantly saying games through the whole thing.
Games.
In terms of like the big ones that I just wanted to call out, and then we'll just get everyone to sort of chime in. For me, the biggest thing, thanks, Mike. I'm literally going to have a mute button for you. The biggest thing I want to call out is direct storage. In my view, the biggest differentiator between like the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and a PC, and I've said this a few times on the show, is the fact that you can actually assume the type of hard drive that you have and then build games that can support that. So one example is, we'll cover that as a review in this episode, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. I just feel the way that game seamlessly moves through. I actually don't know if they could do it on a PC outside of saying you have to have this type of SSD and we're going to benchmark it to make sure it works. So this direct storage, which is directly, lifted from the series consoles, will actually in a really quick summary, it's, you can take stuff from the SSD and pump it straight to the GPU rather than feeding it or processing it all through the CPU. So it just means that the sort of ability to use that storage like a console, to me, will then remove the only real differentiator that I believe is between the consoles, outside of it's a dedicated game machine, obviously, and a PC. So, another win for PC as always. Auto HDR, sorry. Swinny, you've actually used this on the Series X on your TV, right?
Yeah, so I've used it because it can apply to a lot of backwards compatible Xbox One games, and I mean it's awesome. It's awesome tech,
and it can be a bit hit and miss, right? Like some games and some settings, it can be a bit like blowing your eyeballs apart in terms of how bright it can be, depending on the game and everything.
Mass Effect, yeah, and Netflix and Mass Effect are the only two things for some reason I noticed on my specific TV where the red is way overblown that it creates artifacts.
Yeah.
And
I've played with the settings, couldn't fix it. I think it's just my TV as well.
Yeah, and that's interesting because when I was playing Legendary Edition first time last night, I was actually really impressed with the HDR in that.
It looks good, but it's just in my particular case with my TV, it blows one of the colors off.
But also, completely. I mean, we've got Auto HDR versus just HDR supported, and I believe that I could be wrong, but Mass Effect Legendary Edition is actually just HDR supported.
Proper HDR.
I don't think it's Auto HDR. So
yeah, and then we have DirectX 12 Ultimate, which natively integrates tools like Ray Tracing 1.0
for games.
And then finally, another big one for me, because again, you guys have got Series X, but I'm refusing to buy an Xbox this generation because the PC is an Xbox, and they're pushing even more into that with Windows 11, with the store and the integrated Game Pass in the store. An Xbox app is going to be on Windows 11 by default, and cloud gaming is supposedly going to be just fully integrated into it as well. So it's pretty kind of cool and interesting, actually. So was there anything else you wanted to shout out just about Windows 11?
Shut up, Mike. Look, no, I this is the way to do it to me, rather than like their previous approaches with Microsoft Store and going back further to things like Games for Windows Live and stuff, where you're obviously the PC is a gaming platform in general and always has been, but in terms of Microsoft's kind of own proprietary approach to stuff, this is the strongest, I think, out of the gate that they're doing with this. I will say a lot of this stuff they'd actually announced over the last few months about that this stuff was coming, but it's nice to see it all packaged together as a key feature that they're touting for Windows 11, which is great.
And defaults matter, like how you set things up by default. It's a huge deal. Like most people wouldn't even have the Xbox app, and I didn't for a while, on Windows 10. So the fact that it's just integrated in, it's part of the furniture, I think is going to make a huge difference. And people might look at it and go, oh, wait, I can pay like this small subscription fee per month and get all these games and not have to worry about buying on any other stores. So it's going to be really cool. The one thing just to shout out at the moment, and there might be more news about this in the future, but they have confirmed that there's only specific CPUs and above that will actually run Windows 11 when it gets to the official version of it. So it's a free upgrade if you have Windows 10, but I think if you're on like a Ryzen 1000 series, it won't run. Yeah. Mike, I think you're muted. I like how Mike interrupts all the way through, like with really annoying like little interruptions. And then when I actually ask him, Mike, he'll shake his head no on an audio podcast.
I was muted because I was taking my jacket off and I don't want to make a noise. I was respecting your talk by not trying to make too much noise. Sure. Wait, really? 1000 series? But they're pretty good
currently,
CPUs even by today's standards, man.
You know the Surface Studio 2, at this minute, as we speak right now, will not be supported with Windows 11. You will not be able to install it.
I don't understand the why. Like, what are they doing that requires so much CPU power?
Kind of doesn't make a lot of sense because some people have said it's because of the security posture. So the CPUs, the series and above that they're talking about have like secure bootloaders and all this other kind of stuff on it. But if you're an OEM, you can install Windows 11 on unsupported machines, like from the upgrade version perspective.
Okay.
So it kind of seems a bit weird that they would allow that, but why wouldn't you be allowed to upgrade? So I think, Swinny, you've got like one of the Ryzens that you wouldn't be able to install Windows 11. at this stage?
Yeah, I believe so. I think my Surface Laptop would be able to. The Surface Laptop 4, I think it is.
I don't think it can. From memory, it might be 3, but I'll just double check it. It's insane what's not supported.
No games for you.
I think that's like it's saying it's Ryzen 468 or something like that. But anyway, 468. But whatever. Like if it can't upgrade, it can't upgrade. I'm not going to stress about it because I generally don't use my PC for gaming anyway. Well, as a primary gaming platform.
Yeah, I think the Surface Studio 2 is a big one. Maybe the one that you're talking about does work. I don't know. It's just a very strange thing to me. It's a very kind of anti-consumer where I think Microsoft have been pretty decent with that for the recent past, but I don't know. It seems like very positive for games. You know, I think they really wanted to make sure that was drilled into everyone's head, and it was certainly successful in Mike's head. All right, let's move on to the next bit of news. And I think, Swinny, you're going to be big on this one, but Final Fantasy IX, the animated series, is in works. Did you want to cover this, Swinny?
Yeah, let's. So we've got basically, honestly, one of the most surprising news stories that in a long time for me. Nobody would have probably ever expected this. The fact that Final Fantasy 19, Final Fantasy 9 is being turned into a kids animated series. So we're not talking about us getting anime adaptation or a CG movie, you know, like Square's done in the past. An actual kids animated series. And this reports come from a kids entertainment trade publication called Kidscreen. And it's also been corroborated by, I think there's someone on Square Enix's social has confirmed it as well. But the fact that they've also worked with this studio in the past, Square Enix. So the studio is Cyber Group Studios. They're based in Paris. And yeah, they're working with Square Enix to develop the series targeted at 8 to 13-year-old children. So Cyber Group will handle the production, distribution, the licensing, and the merchandising. And they previously worked with Square on the Mini Ninjas animated series, which I didn't know was a thing. Mini Ninjas is actually a really, really cool game by IO Interactive. But yeah, they actually also had the CEO of Cyber Group basically saying that the goal is to begin production by the end of this year or early next year. This is really, really weird, but honestly, I think could be fantastic. Obviously, it's not targeted to someone like me. It's not targeted at Final Fantasy 9 fans. It's targeted to kids. But out of all the Final Fantasy games, this is the one you do it with. Because while Final Fantasy 9 does have its serious moments, 100%, its storyline and its characters can easily be adapted to be to make great. Yeah, a great animated series. You got Vivi, of course, and I think a lot of people that's the kind of character that people will, relate to and emphasize, especially, you could teach kids really good themes around, feeling like, about, feeling ostracized from society and stuff like that and, being part of a group and, having friends and things. I think it's a game that could be used really well for that kind of messaging. It could turn out to be an absolute load of crap that is just everyone's like, oh, that was a thing and that sucked. But I think this is really, really cool news. So, but
I think it's a bit weird because it's interesting. It's very telling that you said this is not for Final Fantasy 9 fans, right? And it's like, why make it then? Why use that IP for something that's not even targeted to people who like that IP? Well, like, that makes no sense to me.
Because the IP is well aligned to the kind of thing they want to do. They obviously, what probably would have happened, I have no idea, is they probably reached out and they worked with Square in the past. Like, we'd like to make another game. They probably already had the idea to use Final Fantasy 9. But when you look at a lot of what Square does, a lot of their other properties aren't really conducive to a kids show.
Sure.
And this is a studio that makes nothing but kids shows. So they're obviously wanting to work on a new Square IP or use that existing relationship. It makes sense to me. When I say it's not targeted Final Fantasy 9 fans, obviously there's going to be a bunch of Final Fantasy 9 fans that are going to watch this, but that's not the primary audience. The primary audience is children. So, and, I don't know about you, but most 8 to 13-year-olds probably haven't played Final Fantasy 9. So,
or don't have a very good way to play it anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's interesting. No, I just thought it was very strange that it's not really that big Final Fantasy 9 in the... I understand that you think it's one of the better Final Fantasy games. I haven't played it, but...
It's my favorite, but I think it's the fact that it's the most suited is why this is being done.
Yeah, definitely the most suited.
Oh, fair enough. All right, let's move on to the next story. GreedFall next gen update and DLC release, Swinny.
Yeah, so this just a warning. This episode is very Swinny heavy.
It's really funny because Swinny was like feeling so unwell before the episode. It's like, all right, this is gonna be a half an hour episode, boys.
Yeah, and honestly, like I try to find a good balance, but each week, but honestly, it's a pretty light news story this week. It's
Swinny,
a big week.
Swinny is the editor of the show, and there's a lot of Swinny stories, and all my stories got rejected. So,
GreedFall.
What stories did I reject? Anyway, so yeah,
dude, I thought you were going to talk about Godfall, and I'm like, why
You're
the heck
an
are we
idiot,
talking
Mike.
about Godfall? That's
You
why
are
I
a
made
legit
those
idiot.
comments. This makes so much more sense.
Okay.
So much more sense.
All right. So this week, Focus Home Interactive have announced that the GreedFall's next gen upgrade and their new expansion, which is called the Vespe Conspiracy, will actually arrive this week on the 30th of June. And we'd actually covered this previously. So back in late November, they announced that this stuff was going to happen, but we didn't know when it was going to happen. So they kind of just said, it's happening this week, so it's cool. Let's talk about it. So if anyone doesn't know, GreedFall is an action RPG by the French RPG studio Spiders, and originally came out in September 2019 for PC, PS4, Xbox One, and received strong to mixed reviews, and so, sold pretty decently for an independent Euro RPG developer. The Spiders have previously worked on The Technomancer, Bound by Flame, Mars Warlogs. Some of those titles people will probably recognize from like Technomancer always crops up in your weekly sales and stuff like that. But they're games that are definitely they're niche RPGs, but Spiders are one of those studios that it's like their ambition shows through everything they do, even if they don't have the capability to achieve all of it. And GreedFall, to me, is a perfect example of that. It's the most polished product they ever put out. I absolutely love the game, but it's also a game that's not going to be for everyone. But it's great that, so we're getting a native upgrade for PS5 and Xbox Series consoles, and the upgrade will be free to anyone that owns the previous versions. So I tried to look up and find confirmation if this still applies to the PS Plus. If people picked it up off PS Plus, which it was on recently, I think like last month or the month before, and couldn't find confirmation against that. So my assumption is it will, but until we know that.
Game Pass, sorry. What about Game Pass? Isn't it on Game Pass?
Yeah, I don't know with Game Pass because you don't own the perpetual license for that game, unlike something like PS Plus. So what is the upgrade? So from essentially as you'd expect, they have 4K and 60 FPS support, but basically that's probably your resolution performance mode trade-off that you do for generally every game. Alongside this upgrade, they're releasing a gold edition, which will include the new expansion as part of the package. So in regards to that expansion, this is the part that I'm most excited about because, I beat GreedFall. While, I might try it out on the next gen, I don't have wouldn't just play it just for that sake, but I will play it because of this expansion. So it'll take place in an unexplored region of Tier-Fredy, which is the island that GreedFall's set on. And it takes place before the ending of the main campaign. So, generally speaking, I'm just trying to think. I think there is a cutoff point, like a point of no return. So hopefully people have got to save before that. I don't think you can exit out when you're in the last area. But yeah, it'll feature new enemies, a new faction, new gear, costumes. So what you'd expect from an expansion. But I'm just excited to play more GreedFall, honestly. And just, before, we move on, just a shout out that anyone that did like GreedFall, that Spiders is currently working on their next game, which is called Still Rising. We've mentioned it before. They released a bit of a weird trailer around the E3 period that I didn't talk about because it was just a bit weird and I didn't think it was a good representation of what they're probably going for. But obviously it's an action RPG, but it's set in the French Revolution, like an alternate reality with robots, and you play as like an automata or army or something. Anyway, it sounds cool. I'm looking forward to seeing a proper trailer. So, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Actually, I want to play this. This looks. I've been meaning to play
Godfall.
GreedFall. Godfall, yeah. I swear to God, I'm such an idiot. I mean, you guys know I'm an idiot, but this is like the cherry on top
No,
of the
you don't
idiocy
focus.
that I exhibit. I get that name. I get the two confused name-wise. Godfall, GreedFall. It's similar. It's
You know
similar in
what?
my head.
I
Mike,
feel
I know
like
they're totally different games, but
I've been telling you about GreedFall since the date
I
came
know,
out, and that
I
was
know.
before Godfall was even a thing
I know that.
people
I'm
knew about.
aware of that. I'm aware I'm an idiot. So I've been meaning to actually play it for quite a while now, and I think this is an awesome opportunity. Hopefully, it's with the Game Pass upgrade, though. We'll see. If it is, I'll definitely play it.
Even honestly,
Looks
even
really cool.
just the like the Xbox One version still runs really, really well and is still a great experience. Anyone that's into like your BioWare style, like Mass Effect RPGs, and likes weird fantasy action RPGs is going to like this game. So
Cool.
Yeah, nice. All right, let's move on to the next story. GMTK Game Maker Toolkit Game Jam for 2021 has wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
So Game Maker Toolkit, insanely good channel from Mark Brown. Basically, if you're keen on making games or you're just like us, very enthusiastic about games, it's almost like a must watch. Every episode that he has, he's always got a very interesting take on whatever topic he's covering, and started his Game Jam series back in 2017. And I think it's like, game devs just love his channel and just want to participate. And it's grown to now be the biggest game jam in the world, like online, in any facet. So with over 5,800 games, up from last year's 5,400. And also, I believe it was last year's one, it actually took down itch.io, the platform that hosts the games. So they work very closely with him now to make sure that, everything's going to work. Now, Swinny, I believe that you played some of the games that were in the 20 that he highlighted.
yeah, so I tried probably about maybe 3/4 of them, so about like 15.
Nice.
And honestly, like these games, it just the fact that people can, pull this stuff together, whether or not.
Sorry, I should have said
amazing.
the theme, Swinny. What's the theme?
Yeah, so the theme is joined together. And the idea is that people had 48 hours to, make a game with that theme. And they could essentially, there were a couple tiny limitations outside of that, but generally it's like they could do whatever they want as long as it was along the theme of being joined together. And the games that I really, really enjoyed that, Mark does talk about in the video. So Sleepy Blocks is one of my favorites. So that's essentially,
I love that one, yeah.
Yeah, a puzzle game. And by the way, a lot of these games you can just play in your browser as well, so it's really, really easy. And they're very short experiences. Like Sleepy Blocks, you can complete, it's like 15 levels pretty easily. A lot of them, they build the concepts and then they may turn them into proper full-fledged games down the line. But yeah, Sleepy Blocks is really, really cool, where you're basically sliding a block around, and once you connect to another sleeping block, then you're moving around connected, but you've got to essentially then place the blocks on like a grid Sokoban style to complete the level. That was really, really cool. Static Cling was another game that I really enjoyed. So that's probably the most, that I think had one of the biggest teams out of these 20 that he featured. And
he Mark mentioned that, didn't he?
Yeah,
he said
and he's
had a full-on team on it.
And he's like, maybe I should reassess maximum team size a bit, because this, but it's awesome. Like it's a really, really cool puzzle game where you move around the environment as like an electrical spark, and you essentially you take over little robot bodies. You trigger and open doors. Lots and lots of cool mechanics. Looks great, and had a really cool lo-fi soundtrack or song. A lot of these just have one single background song, as you imagine. And the other two I quite liked. So the one was called Mrs. Modifier. So this is the platform game where you essentially, it's pretty simple, but you've got 3 buttons. But what you can do is you can open the arcade cabinet and you can swap the functions of those buttons. So you could basically say, okay, you've got functions like moving left and right, jump, air dash, crouch, drop through platforms, and you've got to navigate the levels with arrangement of these things to make it so you can get through it. And that was really, really neat. But
it was a really cool concept just on that one. The only thing is I wonder what it'd be like to actually play it, because it's that constant, the concept's awesome. So Integot, I don't know if you've seen it in detail. I just watched a bunch of stuff on it. You only get 3 buttons from memory, left, right, and an action button. But in order to jump, you can't you need to assign other things to it, or in order to drop down, you need to change one of the buttons to drop down. But that becomes a bit of a puzzle thing as well, because there's certain things where you need a certain combination to get past. And when you look at the cabinet and you reassign all the buttons, you got to think carefully what to do, and you got to like sort of plan ahead. But the only thing is, I wonder how that would actually play, Swinny, just from the perspective of, I don't know, constantly being distracted by having to go and change your button layout, basically.
Well, I can tell you exactly how that plays.
Okay, cool. Tell us. Yes, I'm excited. I haven't actually played it.
If you swap the buttons, it just resets the level. So you have to play the whole level with the same arrangement of buttons.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes so much sense. That's really clever then.
Yeah. And there was one quick one as well. Horse Divorce is really, really cool. So it's a puzzle game.
That's hilarious.
You're moving two ends of like a two-headed horse around to make them kiss by moving boxes up. A lot of these games are super short. That's an example of a super short game where it's like 7 levels and then it's like, thanks, But my favorite one, I'm not going to say
just before you move on from Horse Divorce, it just reminds me that, Overcooked, the Hong Kong and Chinese name for that is Divorce Kitchen.
I love it. It's so apt. But my favorite one, I'm not going to attempt to say the proper French name of it, because I attempted to look it up and I'm like, nah, it's not going to happen. I don't know, Mike, do you want to have an attempt at it?
No, I know the one you're talking about, but no freaking, I don't know how you say it.
I don't know, Integot, do you want to have an attempt?
Possibly serait au fil et I have no idea.
That's pretty decent.
That's pretty good. Pretty good. So it translates to Peaceful Evening Among the Stars. And this was my favorite. It was a very simple game where you connect stars to make constellations, but it has one of the coolest art styles I've probably played in a game in a long time, and just a really great soundtrack. I really hope they turn that into a fully fledged game, because I think it would be really, really good, and it'd be a great mobile game, honestly. So yeah, I think I'm just still amazed at what people can do. Even if they have pre-built assets and music or whatever, I don't care. The fact that they're still able to pull this stuff together in a package and put it up for people to vote on and things within that 48-hour period, I think I'm just amazed by it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, I think people, when they go, oh, why should we care? There's a lot of great games that have come out of game jams. Like, just off the top of my head, some of the big ones like Bubba Is You, Celeste, both, directly come from game jams. So it's a real cool opportunity for people to try different things. And also, if you're working on a project, just going, okay, I'm just going to take a breather, do something different for 48 hours. And, maybe you come up with some interesting ideas that you can bring back into the game that you're working on. So very, very cool.
Yeah, I do question the timing of it this year, and I don't know how it all played out, because I know this stuff takes time to organise. The fact that it fell within the week of E3 just feels like it could have gone either way. It could have kind of been a benefit, but generally I think it wasn't. It just didn't seem like as much of a big deal as last year's was, even though it got more entries. But I think it could have gotten a lot more if it wasn't falling in that week.
Yeah, we did this silly thing of scheduling the conclusion of Game of Some Other Year. Well, I should say because I did schedule it, of scheduling Game of Some Other Year determination in the week of E3. But, we don't have an expectation of 5,000 people, coming on board to submit something and then having millions of people watch the video. So it seems odd, like as if they either don't care or they're just doing it anyway. Or maybe they picked the date thinking that E3 would be the week prior, potentially, Swinny. I don't know. Because I think it would have been awesome if it was this week, right? Or this weekend.
Yeah.
Because there's like not that much news. So it would have been just an awesome opportunity to do stuff. So yeah, hopefully they reschedule it in the future. It'd be really annoying if they have it on E3 every year. It just seems very wasteful, to be honest.
Cool.
But still, so many cool things that came out of it. Sleepy Blocks. That was a highlight for me as well. It's a game I'd definitely play. Puzzle Sigma, do you remember that one with the mathematics?
Yeah, that was really cool, but I could see my brain just exploding.
The same. I'm like, how do I do this?
If they expand that out to anything larger, like I got through it, but then I'm like, oh man, like there's so much there. It also felt like one of the levels you didn't actually have to add anything. You just had to like position the thing to get it. Like that was the idea. I'm like, that was a bit of That was a bit of a cheap thing.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
And Ghost Tale was a cool one as well, that with a bit of more polish and some variations and stuff would have been really, really cool. That's the one where it's like a twin stick shooter, twin stick arrangement.
Yeah.
And each one is a ghostbuster, and you gotta capture things between your beam. And I could imagine that'd be really cool single player, and it'd be really, really cool with two people as well. So yeah, awesome entries. I'm still just amazed at how quickly people can do this stuff. It's nuts. So nuts.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's go to our final bit of news. So it seems like the pandemic that's been, impacting the whole world, including Australia, hasn't hurt Aussie game developers. So the Interactive Games and Entertainment Association, which is the Australian and New Zealand peak video game developer body in this country and New Zealand, they do annual surveys, so surveying all the big players in the Australian market. And some of the survey results have been quite interesting. Swinny, did you want to run through some of them and just how the Aussie game devs have been going?
Yeah, and before I get to, I just want to say there's a couple of big considerations I think that people need to keep in mind here. First of all, the sample size is not massive. So they had 52 respondents, but generally speaking, the kind of questions they're asking, they're not going to be sending surveys to like low-level interns and stuff like that. They're asking business questions. So even though it's 52 respondents, I think that they're probably reaching out to more senior people in these companies. And the Australian games industry is not massive. It's growing and there's lots of small developers. But I think, with any statistics, sample size does matter. And the other consideration is this body, the IGEA, obviously has a very vested interest in the way they communicate these results and stuff. So I think just keeping that in mind is important. But I think there is definitely interesting highlights. So,
and just to add to that, probably the biggest other call out is the Aussie games industry, like the developers, skew more mobile than anything else, in other jurisdictions as well. And you could imagine with COVID, people being locked up and being in front of their phones even more is probably even more beneficial. So,
yeah. So basically, the overall, they found that the industry has remained strong over the last 12 months. And another key thing is that it's kind of given them more enhanced opportunities to find employment outside of what they traditionally would, like local employment and things like that. But there was negative impact definitely felt in certain areas, specifically around contracts and the revenue coming in from contracts and projects that have been cancelled because, let's say, international partners have, maybe felt it a bit more than Australia in that regard. And also this news follows on from the recent new announcement from the federal Australian government that of the 30% tax break that we talked about back on, I think, episode 43. But yeah, some of the quick highlights. So they found that 62% of people reported stable or increased overall revenue. And the important part here is it's compared to 33% last year. So it's actually a lot stronger than last year. And 54% reported stable increased sales revenue compared to 44% last year as well. So the negative impact, 61% of respondents reported cancellation of contracts and projects. Now, they didn't have a reference point to what that was last year, but the fact that the IGEA called that out means that that's probably where they felt the most negative impact. In terms of how it's affected the way that they work, so 60% of the people have adopted a hybrid model of work, so mixing both remote work and office work, which makes sense. That's I would imagine it's probably maybe higher in other industries, but obviously that's that's the way that where I work has adopted, and it's probably going to be the way going forward for a while we're all dealing with this crap. But interestingly, 33% have hired interstate workers, and 28% have hired internationally. So it's really interesting that it's kind of, with this has been talked about a lot outside of games. It's like the pandemic's almost accelerated trends that were probably moving forward anyway. But I just
think it happened in different industries though. More so, I've had friends who pre-pandemic, one friend traveled the world for nearly 3 years, just contracting.
Yeah, but I mean,
they're doing local work, right?
No. All online.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And she lived in a whole bunch of countries. It was really cool.
Yeah, so I think it's just really interesting. If anyone wants to check it out, we'll link the IGEA's kind of write-up about it. There was a quote that I found interesting from Steve Wang, who's the general manager of Wargaming Sydney, and they do like the World of Tanks games and things like that. So he says that now that we're fully flexible, hiring remotely has proven to be very workable for our studio. We have employed new staff from Queensland and New Zealand with no requirement to be in the office. He also does mention the fact that they're also, hiring interns that are working remotely, which I think is a really, really great movement for the industry, knowing that that's always a bit of a barrier if someone wants to get into the Australian gaming industry, is that they have to move to one of the big cities in the past. So now there might be more opportunities to, if you do live in a state or a city that doesn't have a lot of those development houses, looking at that kind of stuff. Now, the other related news that happened this week is this is wider than gaming, but it does impact gaming massively, is the Department of Home Affairs has added programmers and multimedia specialists to what they call the priority migration skilled occupation list, which is a bit of a mouthful, or PMSOL.
Nice.
So I've worked in a related industry to skilled migration pathways before, and this is great news. And it was really born from what I've read, from the fact that during the pandemic, that a lot of industries have struggled to get the skilled people that they need. So they've added, I think, about 20 new occupations to the list, and that's obviously outside of gaming as well. But what it means is that it will make it easier for game developers that are, the skilled game developers that are looking to, potentially move to Australia to gain permanent residency in Australia. And the positive effect that has is that it will open up a lot more talent for our studios here, for people that are skilled and looking to come in to work in Australia. So I think this is great news, combined with that 30% tax break. Honestly, this is the most positive that I think the Australian games industry has looked in, I don't know, it's almost ever to me.
Yeah. I think in terms of settings from the government, it's certainly the best that's ever been. I think in terms of like what the games industry has been producing, it's getting there. I mean, we don't have any AAA studios anymore, so that's a bit of a shame. But yeah, it's interesting. I think this programming thing is more about like big companies in Australia who need more programmers because so many things are moving digital. But it's going to have the knock-on effect of making, as you said, a lot easier to get game devs to move to the country if they do want international talent.
If we do have Activision's Melbourne studio that they're really increasing now. So, but if you're talking about fully owned Australian AAA studios, and look, I don't know when that was the case anyway. So, but yeah,
I think it was around the LA Noire time, and also Borderlands the prequel.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this is great. Just any time that some Aussie games industry news comes up, we're the ones that are going to look at it. So.
Yeah, sweet. All right, and what we do now to wrap up the news is we do our Minuteman section. I will not labour it this week. I think Swinny wanted it as the editor-in-chief to always be me, and I feel like he's trying to throw me under the bus. So you only have 1 minute, and you have to cover everything, and then the timer stops when you finished covering everything, and if the alarm goes off, then you're kaputs. So maybe what we'll do is if the alarm goes off, then whoever's doing it, they can't do it. It has to rotate to someone else. So this week, Mike is going to do it. My bet is he's going to fail. Swinny, do you think he's going to get through it?
I think he will get through it because he's going to just like...
No, because you
has
need
to be intelligible.
To hear it. It has to be, yeah. Which is weird coming out of my mouth. But
all right, are you ready to go, Mike? Because you got to hear the little intro to you got to hear the stinger, and then the timer's going to start. And also, there's going to be a 10-second warning. You'll hear some claps. So for everyone who's listening via audio, you'll hear the 10-second clap, and you'll know he's only got 10 seconds to go. The guys still haven't heard what the alarm is, so we'll see how this goes. All right, here you go, Mike, to wrap up the news this week.
All right, Cyberpunk 2077 is not Sony recommended by Sony on base PS4. Valve has headed region change limits to Steam to combat regional price exploits. You only get it once every 3 months. Baldur's Gate 3 will not release in 2021. Larian has stated they are aiming for 2022. Overwatch's crossplay functionality has gone live for all platforms. Booker T has lost his lawsuit against Activision for infringing on his G.I. Bro character in Call of Duty. EA has acquired mobile dev Playdemic for $1.4 billion off Warner Media. Tencent now holds a majority stake in Spec Ops, the line developer Jaeger. Portal creator Kim Swift has joined Xbox's publishing arm, moving on from EA Motive. Bayonetta 3 is progressing well, according to Nintendo's Bill Trinan. Pokemon Sword and Shield leakers to pay $150,000 after a court settlement with the Pokemon Company. Xbox head Phil Spencer has said new Killer Instinct is about finding the right team and opportunity, and WitcherCon will be digitally a digital event held by CDPR and Netflix on 7th of July.
We had a snippet.
You guys didn't hear that. I think to be fair to Mike,
I know what it is. I know what it is.
On the record, Mike got through. So well done, Mike. Well done.
Nice.
I pressed the button. I think there was a slight delay in OBS.
What I said?
And I'm so sorry for I think it was me butchering.
No, it was me. It was the Sony. No, I was starting to rewrite it, and then Mike said, "Just leave it." So I'm like, "All right, I'll leave it how it is."
Fine, leave it.
Cyberpunk 2077 is not Sony recommended by Sony.
What I loved about it was that you had a Ron Burgundy approach of just reading whatever it says. So you said Cyberpunk 2077 is not Sony recommended by Sony. No, we're very well done. I actually thought you were gonna fluff it at the last minute. Did you think that's Swinny?
Yeah, it got tight.
But the thing is, Mike was adding random extra words. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, all right,
guys. I've already lost 3 seconds. I've lost 5% of all the time I have.
Oh, good job.
Good job. Thanks. I might change the alarm, unfortunately, because you did hear a little bit of a taste of it.
I don't know what it is, though. I
know. That sound is burnt into my brain.
If you know it, it's iconic. You're not going to... And probably very infamous as well. So, all right, let's move into my maybe second favorite segment now. The bargain bin for the week commencing 27th of June 2021. As always, Epic Game Stores giveth Tim Sweeney is giving us Horizon Chase Turbo and Sonic Mania, very, very good game, for free this week. On Steam, we have the Steam Summer Sale, which runs until the 8th of July. There are thousands of games on sale, so well worth checking out just to see if there's a game that you like on there. Some of our highlights: Dishonored Complete Collection, so that's 1, 2, and Death of the Outsider is $34.50. Divinity Original Sin 2 Definitive Edition is $26, one of the cheapest I've seen it. Halo Master Chief Collection is $24.97. Horizon Zero Dawn, the Complete Edition, is $45. Sekiro is $45. Sid Meier's Civilization 6, $22.50. Or the Anthology bundle, which is $73.25, and Stardew Valley is $10.20. Mike, do you want to cover the Nintendo and PlayStation ones?
Sure thing. So digital highlights, we have a Die for Valhalla, which is 80% off until the 3rd of July. Sakuna of Rice and Ruin is 30% off at $42.95 until the 7th of July. And Earthlock is 80% off for $7.50 until the 24th of July. And we did discuss Metro, which unfortunately by the time you hear this is probably going to disappear, but just in case you do get to it, get Metro Last Light for $3 something odd. Totally worth it. On PlayStation, for digital highlights, we have all until the 8th of July, Doraemon Story of Seasons at 75% off for $17.50. Fire Pro Wrestling World Deluxe Edition at 70% off for $39. Hotline Miami Collection. I didn't realize that number 2 was actually available to us at 75% off for $7.50, and Persona 5 Royal 55% off at $45. Over to you, Swinny, for the Xbox highlights.
Yeah, so we've got some Game Pass Edition highlights. So available now is Worms Rumble on console and PC Game Pass. Coming on the 29th of June, we've got Going Under, which is available on console Game Pass, maybe PC Game Pass, but I couldn't find confirmation of that one. And available from the 1st of July, we've got some really cool games. First being Bug Fables, The Everlasting Sapling on console and PC Game Pass. Massively recommend that game. I love it. Gang Beasts on console and PC, which is great for anyone, especially on Game Pass, that's wanting a really cool multiplayer experience. And we've got Limbo on console and PC.
You know what I just realized? Did you remove my comment about the Series X blades in Minuteman?
No, it wasn't there.
Oh,
I didn't touch anything.
Oh, okay. So the other, I mean, it's related to Game Pass then. Microsoft are upgrading from Xbox One S server blades to Xbox Series X server blades for xCloud. And people are reporting the games are like running heaps faster, better frame rates, which I mean, super logical, right? You're running from Xbox One S to Xbox Series X. So it's a big jump there. So yeah, like I think xCloud's just going from strength to strength.
I just want to call out Mike putting Metro last light. The fact that sale has 12 hours left, this podcast won't go live for another 9 hours, and unless people skip to the bargain bin, that means they probably have a total of 2 hours if they listen to the whole show the day it comes out.
To be fair, we mentioned it right at the start of the show when you were off getting your package, Swinny. So, yeah. And I did say at the time there's only 11 hours left of this, so probably no one's going to get it.
13, I think you said. So
yeah, 13 at the time, which is like 2 hours later.
Get to it. We keep warning you. We just keep talking about it.
All right, let's get into our features, and we'll start off with my review of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. I feel like I do need to read the copy that Swinny has. I don't normally do it. Read the copy that Swinny has in the run sheet. So this is, it sounds weird to say, but I guess, integot, alternate dimension, mechanical alter ego Interbot reviews Insomniac's blockbuster sequel, which is incorrect. It's not a blockbuster sequel. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. We know he loved his first few hours of the game. What did he think of the whole thing?
I thought he finished it last time.
Wait, what is incorrect about saying blockbuster sequel?
Well, it's not a sequel.
A sequel? Yes, it is. It's a sequel to. It's a new sequel in the
a new sequel. Wait, are you getting a bit
sequel doesn't always mean the second game. It means just another game in the series.
Jerry.
I think it's like pretty inaccurate to say it's a sequel in this case.
Okay, it's a new Ratchet and Clank.
It's a continuation of the series,
Round
right?
one.
That's a sequel.
Yeah, but it's not a like direct, because it takes a bit from 2016's remake, which is actually like not on the same timeline, and then also mixes in with
you just
the game
got
that
an
came
uppercut,
before.
Swinny.
No, that's not an uppercut. That's a miss. That's a fail.
No, I think the independent judge between us, Mike, has Mike has declared victory to me.
Mike's whipped by you, so he always takes his side.
Wait, hang on. I'm not, because I'd like to point out that I swear he finished it last week when he did the preview about it.
No.
Yeah, I thought he said
I covered the preview 2 weeks ago.
How can it be so cool? 2 weeks ago, whatever. And I'm like, how can it be so short? He's like, yeah, it's a short game. So I'm like, what are you reviewing today? You already told us about the game. You finished it.
Mike is the hype master. He's really hyping up the segment. So someone just jumping on. Why would you listen to the review? Number one, I only played a few hours when I did the impression last time.
I thought he finished it.
No. So that was 2 weeks ago. Then E3 happened. So we're not going to do the review because it's so much stuff in this episode.
Yeah,
so we'll keep the review for next week. I hadn't finished it at the time I did the impressions.
Okay, enough hype. Let's get to
it. All right. I mean, just like to continue your failure of being a hype master. This game, if you have a PS5, you should get this game. Why would you have a PS5 if you don't get this game? It's pretty simple. It's a great game. It's good platformer.
Yes.
If you've played the Ratchet and Clank series, you'll definitely love it. That's the overview. Now, I'll go into like what I loved, what I mehed about, and then what I hated about the game. Now, there's a lot to love. So obviously the first is the graphics of the game are incredible. I know it's so reductive and everyone said this, but it just looks like a CGI movie. It looks like, if you actually go back to the Ratchet and Clank movie that came out in 2016, I'd almost argue this looks better than that game. And this is running in real time on a console, which is just insane.
A lot better than the prequel?
Well, it's not. There's no prequel to this game.
Damn it! Nearly got him.
No, you didn't. And even going back to the 2016 remake on the PS4 with the 60 frames per second bump that you can have for, I think it's PS4 Pro and for the PS5, but PS5 for sure. You do notice the step up in this game. It is a true next gen game, and it's really interesting to see the developers at Insomniac come out and say, we are just barely scratching the surface of what we're doing with the graphics in this. Like we really couldn't even, do more that they really wanted to. In terms of other things that I loved about this game, it's just very Moorish. You just start playing it and it's hard to put down. And part of it is about the loading, because the loading, in my view, just doesn't exist. It feels like they've artificially thought, well, we need to pause the action a little bit to get people to have a breath and then get back into it. And there are times where I even found myself sitting there going, oh, wait, like the cut scene is finished, the game's starting. Like it just seamlessly goes through everything. You don't really look at it. It's like, a lot of Nintendo games do this where you go, wow, this looks incredible, this cutscene. And then it gets into the gameplay and you're like, oh, you can tell that this is the game now. It's very distinct, the difference between those two things. And for me, I really like powered through this game. It's not a very long game and I'll get back to that. But, I would play this in 2 to 3 hour blocks and it's not difficult at all. It doesn't feel very frustrating to me, like at least the gameplay and just how the game plays out. Other things, the DualSense, it's such a cool implementation of the DualSense. Overall, I am not as hyped about the DualSense as other people are. I think a lot of it is quite gimmicky and I don't really think it's something that, Xbox should be worried about, releasing a new version of the Series controller, with a lot of the features. Still, I think the best thing about the controller is the triggers. They're just like, it's very cool, the sort of the sense that they can tighten them up and loosen them and do things like that. But it is a very good implementation and you'd expect that as a sort of first party developer. In terms of characters, awesome set of characters, love Rivet and Kit. I think, this game, it's like the 27th, I think, in the series of Ratchet and Clank. So you can tell that the team, they love this game and the lore of this game. And I think they had a really fun time coming up with a new set of characters. So Rivet and Kit being alternate dimensions of Ratchet and Clank. And, it's kind of a bit darker, the story between those two. I won't spoil anything, but it's just very, very cool. And as I said with the impressions, and, you play this through, I haven't played very much of any other Ratchet and Clank game. And this game is such a good introduction. And it's so smart that they've done it like this where, a lot of people, maybe they're jumping on PS5, like Swinny probably will grab a PS5 rather than a PS4. I don't think you've played many of the Ratchet games. It's such a cool entry point to the series. And they've played a lot around with the lore of the game and linking it back to the history of the game. So I think it's just really fun for a creator where you go, oh, okay, we're in an alternate dimension. So we can view other aspects of a character that exist in our dimension to just, bring things out. And, if you're really familiar with the series, I'm sure that's like people really, get that resonance with it. But even for me, it's really funny to see, okay, this dude's a pirate in this dimension and totally different character in another. And it's just, quite funny. Other things I love, like this is a next gen game. Like we need more next gen games. And I do laugh when people talk about, oh, this game could be put into PS4. It could be put into PS4 to me, not as an extreme as this, but it's like Tony Hawk going on the GBA. It's like still the core of it's Tony Hawk, the levels, but it's isometric now. It's different. It's not the same game. And some of the mechanics that they use in this game and just the visuals, you lose so much from the seamless transitions. They would have to put, I think, more cutscenes instead of scenes where you can actually control the action. And it just would be a far inferior game. And I understand there's 110 plus million people on PS4, but you do need, I think, some exclusives on your console. It's a bit weird to not have any. In terms of voice acting, fantastic. I usually don't really love voice acting in games. For whatever reason, this game, all the characters, it all felt seamless. It's not a long game, so I think it kind of benefits from that. But, all the voice acting very much on point, just on the length of the game. I personally love that this is not a 40 hour, 50 hour, 60 hour plus game. I am so sick of like every game feeling like they need to add in, pack in value. I know that you've sort of, I don't know how hard you've been on this, Swinny, but like with Assassin's Creed and just games like that, just padding things out. I'm not a huge fan of that at all. And this game, it is a bit of a collectathon at some points, but it's a collectathon you don't have to participate in. But everyone that I hear talking about this game, and myself included, you just feel compelled to go back and, I want to get all the golden bolts or I want to do this. Everything's just very seamless and frictionless in this game.
The thing with that, though, is there's not that many collectathons anymore anyway. So there's people that like those kind of games, and they don't get many of them anymore. So that's not a negative to me. That's like, well, it's if people want that, as you said, it's optional, then hey, there's a new one of these games that people that like that stuff.
Yeah, and I very much love that.
Optional,
and I think collectathon is like almost a negative word now, just because of, I probably the one that everyone talks about is Donkey Kong Country 64. It's certainly not like frustrating. And the last thing that I'll say that I loved is that it recognizes itself as a game and it's meant to be fun. So without spoiling too much, but you go between Rivet and Ratchet and they're like alternative dimension versions of each other. And as you get weapons and, the weapons have skill trees and the weapons are awesome in this game. When you unlock something as Rivet, it unlocks for Ratchet as well when you go back to Ratchet gameplay.
Interesting.
And there's a comment in the game and it's tongue in cheek. It's just like, hey, how does this work? I don't really understand how this is working, Like, how do I have this new gun? But I'm like, thank God they did this. Because when I actually got some stuff and then I went back to the other character, I was thinking, oh, shit. It's like, because it doesn't make any sense. Why would the other character have that gun? I'm like, oh, this is so annoying. I just really wanted to use that. I just upgraded it. And then I went to the gun and it's like, oh, it's there. I'm like, sweet.
That's awesome.
And it kind of like,
it's like they handled it in a cool...
It reminds me of Doom 2016, like the opening of that game, they're talking about the story and then the Doomslaver is just like, basically fuck that and just like throws the monitor away and smashes it. It's like, yeah, it's just a fucking game. Just play the fucking game. It's fun. It's not every game has to have a crazy story. So, I mean, that's kind of an interesting segue just into what I meh about. The writing, like maybe for some people, they'll find it really funny or just that kind of, tongue in cheek writing all the way through it. I just ultimately found it a bit basic. It's a bit straightforward. There are no real compelling hooks. The twists in the game felt super, super obvious that they were coming. Not terrible, but like I said, it's a bit meh for me. Another one.
You're also the person that expects Schindler's List from every video game. So.
No, but to be fair, Swinny, like I have a very high standard on story writing and things like that. So that is fair criticism. And like I said, some people, I think they might like it. I didn't say I hated it. I just meh about it. The other meh is the bugs. So weird that there's so many bugs in this game. Like I actually was really surprised. Like to a point where I'm actually shocked that more people don't make mention of it and it hasn't impacted the scores for the game because it's very highly rated. I look at it as like, and this is why I say it's a meh. It's like they will fix it. I'm very confident that they'll fix the bugs, but quite often I'll find myself just getting trapped in the game, in the platforming of the game. Like you fall in between something and then, Ratchet's just spinning around like insane, like it's almost cyberpunk-esque. Bugs, but the game really, I think it's just so charming overall, to a lot of people that, they just look past it. And they do seem to be pretty smart because if I got stuck and then I just left the controller for like literally 3 seconds, my character would die. So I felt like they actually knew that there were bugs in it because you would never program something like that into a game. It doesn't make any sense, right? But it's like, as if the player model can't move and there's no input, the game just kills you straight away. So it's like kind of an interesting thing that it works like that. The rift mechanic, another thing.
Catch-all
what was
exception. That? It's one of those catch-all exceptions.
Yeah, I think so. I honestly think, it's the finally, clause. With the rift mechanic, for me, it's like, and I know I'm a bit of a Nintendo shield wearing a Nintendo, and all Nintendo stuff behind me, but one thing I love about Nintendo, especially their first party games, they'll have a concept and then they'll flesh it out and fully, go deep on it and they might move on. It might just be like one level where they do that. Like a lot of Mario games do that. I feel like with the rift mechanic, so this idea of like being able to open up dimensions, move into them or pull your own dimension closer to you and move around in your dimension, it just really wasn't explored in a way that was creative or fully. Like it felt like, and I don't think I'll be the first to say this, but I just felt like it was a grappling hook in a lot of ways, or just like a portal to go into another universe, but had nothing integral about the gameplay that set it apart. And it, to me, is such a shame that they did not explore it in an interesting way. And if they they will make another follow-up to this game and maybe an actual sequel. I just think like hopefully that's what they do because, without spoiling anything, it's really late in the game where you feel like you have your whole arsenal and then, you can actually do stuff with it. Other things I went a bit meh about, and I'll kind of combine these together, but like the platforming, then there's separate Clank sections and separate like hacking puzzles. And they're all a bit like, and you know, it sounds crazy because I did love this game, but you know, platforming and level design, it just is so by the numbers. It's very few areas I ever felt like were very creative or interesting or throwing something at me. It felt very much like almost like on rails. I'm not expecting every game to be like an open world game or anything like that. It's just more that there was nothing the game was throwing at me where I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. You've put this in front of me, and then I've gone, oh, I need these 3 things to put these together and then get through. And that's what I always look for in platforming games. It's how do you use the mechanics of the game that it gives you to then explore creatively in different ways. And it just kind of doesn't hit the mark too well for me. Like the Clank puzzle sections, I mean, the best descriptor that I could have is if you've played the Breath of the Wild shrines, it's like the most basic shrines, just like 3 in a row, like one after the other. Like they are like, I'm not very smart. These are just like so easy to solve. Like I was actually on like teleconferences at work and stuff, and I was just playing it to the side. I wasn't even paying attention to the game at all because I was presenting in some, but it was just so easy. I was just like, grab this, move that. And it's almost like you have no real optionality in the puzzle. It's like you can only do these things or else you can't even do anything in the puzzle. So it's like, well, I have to grab that thing because there's nothing else I can literally do. So it was a bit of a shame. And the hacking ones are interesting. I didn't mind them. I've heard a lot of people getting like motion sickness from them because you have a perspective. It's like you're a little spider that crawls around trying to kill viruses in this cyber world. And as you move, it really fluidly moves upside down and the whole world will move around you and like really quickly. So even when I was playing, I was like, whoa, this is really crazy. It'd be cool in VR. But yeah, a lot of people have got motion sickness from it. And again, it's something, you know, like the great thing about this game, and I'll whack this in the things that I love, the accessibility, the options, it gives you lots of space to do different things in this game and skip bits. And you can actually skip these puzzles and you can skip them and still get all the rewards from them without doing anything. So I feel like they kind of almost recognize some people won't like these. So like, let's just give them the ability to skip. And
well, it's also probably for smaller children as well.
That's true. And just on that, so like the last kind of meh thing is the game is just too easy. It's like too easy, and I really mean it in this way of it's way easier than like a Mario Odyssey. And in the sense that there's nothing in this game that's hard. You can crank the difficulty up, but there's nothing challenging in this game. Whereas at least with even Odyssey, there's some kind of, you know, late game, very like extra, way past the rolling credits. That's, you know, it's some platforming skill that you have to complete it. And you absolutely do not need to complete it if you want to play the game.
Whereas are there any tough trophies or anything like that?
It's so straightforward. Like everyone gets a platinum in this game if you play it for like 15 hours or so. The hardest thing is there's a weird trophy that you have to get the platinum where the descriptor is a bit weird and it's sort of about reflecting bullets or reflecting, and people don't really understand what it means. So they're trying to shoot everyone and like get it to ricochet off other people. It's really, I think you just have to put your shield up and let the bullets bounce off your shield to get that trophy. But literally that's the hardest trophy that everyone talks about. Like everything else, and this is kind of what I'm saying, the game's too easy. It's like everything is marked on the map. It's like, here's what you need to get. Here's what you need to get. It's not like hidden. So you know where it is. And then just to round it out, like what I hated about the game, and then, you know, it's a bit harsh, but I'm just trying to be edgelord. Like, and you know, it's kind of all around the same thing. It's just that to me, there's nothing like magical about this game. And I know that's a high bar, but to me, I don't understand how people could say this is like a 10 out of 10 game. Like to me, the game has no X factor. There's nothing so compelling in this game. It's very much a game where I feel like in 5 years' time, people go, yeah, that was a good game. Yeah, Ratchet Clank Rift Apart. Wow, great game. But not like a game of a generation or a game of the year. I do think it will factor into the game of the year. I think it will be one of the nominees. I'm very much thinking it will be. But I couldn't see this as a game of the year at all, especially when you've got other creative games coming out. And you know, it's hard for me not to compare it to Astro, given that Astro comes with a console. To me, in almost every way, Astro feels superior to this game. More creative, you know, puzzles, more creative gameplay. And it's also a platformer. the biggest thing is probably Astro, like the graphics in Astro, whilst being great, you know, they are another level with Ratchet and Clank. They are so insane in Ratchet and Clank. And then just like the last thing that I hate, I'm not a big Marvel movie fan. And in a way, it kind of actually reminds me of a Marvel movie, this game. It's just like a popcorn blockbuster, highly polished, but kind of doesn't have an edge to me to like grip me into and actually like, you know, fully go, wow, this is totally amazing 10 out of 10 game. But having said all of that, as I said at the start, I totally recommend this game. You know, really, really enjoyed it. And just feels like a no-brainer on the PS5 to show the difference from a PS4.
Do you think it's worth $110?
So, I mean, like, I don't currently have my copy. And I would buy this game again for like $30 or $40. I think that's a really hard one because I don't like judging games on their dollar value, even though I might be the most insane person buying a game for certain prices and not buying it for others. I just think it's like you need to talk about what the game's like, and then it's up to you what you think the value is. I actually hate the whole, the game's 100 hours, so I get my dollar per hour value. I think that's insane to look at.
I'm not talking dollar per value. I'm just saying general.
I know. I'm just trying to call that out, like specifically that point.
That amount.
For me, no, it's not worth $110 personally, but I think it's a very personal thing. I think if you look at Astro, I played for like 10 hours, I think, in the end to do everything platinum that. I think this game's maybe 15, 20 hours to platinum. So you say double, right?
But he paid $750 for Astro.
So don't laugh at Astro, man. It's going to go down.
I'm not laughing. It's great.
The trajectory the PS5 is going, Astro will be 100 million, sales units. That's how it's going to get counted. It's going to be one of the best selling games of all time. So like the way for me, for people to look at it is go, what did you think of Astro? If you've got a PS5, you've got Astro, would you pay, $110 for double the amount of content for Astro? And I think the answer would be no for most people in that way, but there's not many games out there. So
thank you, member for Big Week in Gaming, for that
political answer. So you sound like a politician.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I want to be clear that it's like, for me, I don't think of it like that. So it's kind of like, for me, no. But for other people, 100%.
Thank you. That's what I was wanting to know.
Okay.
You're like a reporter. Yes or no question.
That's all I will quote. No.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's move on to our final segment of the show. And it is Game of Some Other Year. We choose the next Game of Some Other Year. So you've been on the journey with us maybe for 2011, one of the greatest years of video games. Swinny and I were only on the show at the time. We didn't want to include Mike because we were worried that he was going to interrupt all the way through. Well-founded
You were on
fears.
the
money. Or get us cancelled.
Or not prepare. So all the things we were worried about were true. But yeah, it was kind of a bit uneventful, Swinny, last time. We said we had any year possible. We both came up with top 3 and we both landed on the same number 1. So it's a bit like hard to go past it. And there wasn't much conversation really past that. We sort of spoke about the other years that we could have picked. So I think we did have very different picks, outside of that. But what we have decided is for this one, just given that we did 2011, let's mix it up. So let's do the 90s. So the goal is we can only choose a 90. And now for any of the video clip watchers or the main show watchers, I will take off this background quite shortly because I think people are going to have an epileptic fit. I might remove it straight away. There you go. You've seen what the 90s are. All right. So we've all picked our top 3. Top 3 of the 90s years. We have not spoken about what each of us picked. And we'll sort of go from there, like see what we're going to land on. So who wants to go first? We'll start from third, yeah? So we'll go all our third picks, second, first. And it could get very anticlimactic if we've all picked the same first.
I was meant to choose.
I know, it looks like he's actually... All right, so people at home, it genuinely looks like he's coming up with it in his head.
It's because I've got a top 4, and for the life of me, I cannot narrow down spot 3 and 4 to put a number 3.
Whatever's on the top of the list, remove that one. That's your choice. That's gone.
Okay. So...
Well, who wants to go first? Do you want me to go first? Because I already know
You can go first,
clearly.
yeah.
Okay.
Go. Yeah.
So, and I got it on the screen. It's very basic, so just forgive me. So out of all the 1990s years, and so many good years, it's insane actually. If you go back in the 90s, like some of the years are bangers. For my third pick, I regard as maybe it's the best year of video games, but I'm picking a third, and there's reasons we can get to it.
Mhm.
I think it's the best game. I think it's the only year that you can genuinely go, all right, this can go head to head against 2011 as being the best year of video games. So obviously, and I'm trying to edit it now, but I've made it.
We all know what it's going to be.
It's 1998. I've picked
Yeah.
1998 as my
Okay.
third pick.
Yep.
Mike.
Interesting. Okay. So my.
Wait, are we not going to explain why, like some of the games, maybe?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. So 1998.
Just quickly.
Tell us about 1998.
And, just like, I'm glad you called that out because we're going to cover it from the start. Now, when you talk about 2011, most even by 2011, worldwide releases, everything came out in the same year. There's hardly any controversies. As you go back in time, the world's very different. And we all live in Australia, which again is even different again because some games never came out here or like only came out in Europe or only in America. So the way we're looking at this is our logic, that we're looking back, not at the Japanese releases. We are looking at when they hit Western shores. So that could be North America or Europe or Australia, because there are some cases where it came out in Australia first. Now, the other quirk to that, and we'll work through it probably more closely when we actually pick the year, is some games came out in arcades, then they came out on home consoles. Those said games are sometimes very similar, so you could almost bucket it as the same game. Some are different, like the arcade and the console version are quite different. So it's kind of almost a case-by-case basis, and we'll have to work through it. And then you get really weird quirks, like Diablo is probably the weirdest, that they almost themselves regard it as coming out as 2 different years. But officially, they say it's the start of January when the game came out in 97. But on some sites, you even see it saying as it came out on the 31st of December, 1996.
Well, we're officially going to put it in 97.
97, yeah. So, like, yeah, well, there's debates on those kind of things. I think when it's only one day and it's like a day you can't even shop, that really shouldn't count. So, 1998, I mean, like, look at this. Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, easily in my top 10 video games of all time. Very tied closely in my mind with Breath of the Wild. I would love to replay this and see if I feel like Breath of the Wild's better or this is better. Half-Life, I mean, come on. Metal Gear Solid, StarCraft. This year is like such a banger that I could drop off games that are just like huge for other people, what can I say? 1998 is an incredible year. Pokemon Blue and Red, Resident Evil 2, it's just
Tekken 3.
I know, it's Gran Turismo. Like, I mean, this year is ridiculous. I started to rank from my own perspective, and I actually had to stop at 20 games because I was like, holy shit, I've forgotten Thief. Oh my God, Oddworld. This is just like, Final Fantasy Tactics, a game that I feel like needs to get more attention. It's just an insane year. So 1998, but I've ranked it third, and I'll give reasons why later.
Oh, interesting. You got a third. Okay.
Because this is not necessarily what I think is the best year in the 90s. We don't need to do that. It's what year should we pick to compete and fight and cover.
So you're not explaining why now?
I think as we go through, I want to explain why.
Okay. All right.
Okay, cool.
Mike, do you want to go for your third pick?
So my number 3 spot was 1996.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so in 1996 we got...
So a certain listener will be happy to hear that.
But he's ranked at third, so that's not good.
I ranked at third, unfortunately.
Because if we don't have 96, he's in trouble.
It depends what you guys come up with. It might end up being number 1. So that was the year that we got Super Mario 64, which, set a precedent for a lot of modern Mario games. We got Quake, which, again, huge game. Terra Enigma, Command & Conquer Red Alert.
Is that one of your favorites, Terra Enigma?
I never actually played it. One of the reasons why I'm doing some of the rankings is it's a tough call between I've played this and will love to play it again, and I think it's a solid game, and it's so many good games that year versus never really played this properly. This is a great opportunity to play these games.
Yeah.
And look, some of the other mentions I think from 1996 are Red Alert from the Command & Conquer series, which amazing game at the time. Resident Evil, Crash Bandicoot, Tekken 2, Tomb Raider came out that year. They're probably like the big ones that I can think of. That's 96 in third spot for me.
All right, and third spot for me, and this will be nice and easy, is 1998.
Oh.
So
Ooh,
same as Integot. And my little note next to it, best year in gaming ever. So exactly what he said. So
interesting. The logic you guys use.
I am going to explain a little bit why I've got that third myself. Is because we just mentioned this is not about the best year. Honestly, it's kind of like, I think if we chose 1998, not only would it be a very difficult task to actually rank that stuff, but also, honestly, the later we get in the 90s, the trickier it's going to be to really judge a lot of these games in a 2021 light. Because once you hit the N64, PlayStation era, a lot of the games, those early entries in the 3D generation show their age a lot more.
That's true.
Yeah, whereas when we look earlier to the 90s, then, we're in the 16-bit era. So that's the reason why I'm actually not going 1998, although it is the best year in gaming ever, according to probably two of us.
Well, I didn't say it's the best. I said it's right up there with 2011. I think they're the only 2 years that could be the best. I'm not sure. I feel like I think at one stage the show will run long enough that we'll go back to 1998. I'm pretty confident about that.
Oh, no doubt. We'll run out of years eventually.
All right, I guess it's me, right?
Yeah, number 2.
So kind of like on a similar theme, though, I have chosen 1997 as my second pick. I think another insanely compelling year, specifically to me as well. Symphony of the Night. I've only played a little bit of it, which is really weird because I'm such a huge Metroidvania fan. Maybe because I stan Metroid more than I stan Castlevania, even though I do love the Game Boy Advance game, so it's a bit illogical what I just said. Another banger year. Like personal favorites for me, stuff like Diddy Kong Racing, Star Fox 64, Quake 2, which, I even admit myself, I can't say Quake 2 would necessarily be in the top 6 that year. And we should call out that, we will do a top 6 at least. I think Swinny wants to do a top 10, but we'll discuss that off air. Like so many bangers in this year as well. Mario Kart 64. And I think, like, for me, the trickiest part of this year is if you go through some of the games, there's actually awesome co-op and multiplayer games in this year. And you'd almost want to, like, GoldenEye 007, you'd almost want a way for us to all play that, to give it, it's just desserts, because you kind of almost have to judge it on that element as well. But yeah, that's why I've landed on 1997, and a little bit selfishly as well, because I really want to actually play Castlevania, Final Fantasy VII, and Diablo, and they're all listed there. So, How about you, Mike? What's your second pick?
So my second pick is 1998.
Oh,
so yeah.
I'm getting worried.
So there's not much else I can say.
98 could be the winner.
Other than there's a whole bunch of games, and I think you guys are right, but I also think some of those games do stand the test of time. So The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, I think, is still totally playable. I'd love to play it. Half-Life is still, to this day, a decent game. I know it's clunky, but it's an amazing game still.
Dude, I installed Half-Life to test it was working because I was going to play Half-Life 2, and I ended up playing it for 3 hours. I was like, damn, this game is so compelling. Like, to this day.
So it's going to be interesting, trying to play a game like Resident Evil 2, and you have to play the original. You can't play the new Resident Evil.
You couldn't play the remake of that.
Not that one. Not that one. But I think with Metal Gear Solid, you probably could play the GameCube version of that potentially.
Yeah.
We can talk about that.
Anyway, we'll talk about it if we get around to that. Something's going to be a bit hard. Like Gran Turismo is going to be really interesting to play. Grim Fandango, totally playable even by today's standards. You can get it on the Switch. Baldur's Gate, I still think holds a test of time. There's the opportunity to play the new version of it. What else do we have? Fallout 2.
Yeah, we've covered
amazing game. Still works perfectly fine. In fact, I'd play that any year. So there's a lot of really good titles I think that are totally playable and highly enjoyable. So that's me for 90 on my second spot.
I just noticed the years are appearing above our names. That's cool. It's like RPG damage numbers.
Yeah, I just did this as a very small thing, just so I could also track what everyone's saying.
So my second pick is 1994.
1994. I was thinking about 94, yeah.
So 94 is actually, I believe, was probably my second pick last time as well.
Yeah,
or at
it
least
was. It was.
And the reason why I didn't get bumped up the first, well, I'll get into it, but
Mhm.
94 was like a hallmark year for the 16-bit era. It was probably, to me, like the best year of the SNES myself. So we had Super Metroid.
Which is my favorite game of all time.
Yeah, so Final Fantasy VI. There's a lot of games that aren't, like, I'm just looking at this list. I'm trying to like,
Ultima 8.
go across a bit.
That's in my top 10 games of all time.
You had Donkey Kong Country. I mean, like, there's games here that to me are just like hallmarks of that era. And then you got a whole bunch of awesome PC games. You got System Shock. You've got, as you said, what'd you say, Mike? Sorry, what was the game?
Ultima
you said?
8.
Ultima 8. You got Doom 2, and then like, if you're taking are you taking NBA Jam Arcade in this year?
No, I think it was the SNES version.
That's the SNES. Well, even the SNES one, right? But on arcade, you had Daytona bloody USA.
Yeah, which for whatever reason in Australia, it's so popular.
Yeah,
every arcade in Australia has Daytona USA.
But to me, it's really about those first two games for me. That's what makes that year. But it's not my number one.
Well, like for me as well, just to add to that, like, I played a lot of Warcraft. Like that year, and obviously Super Metroid is my favorite game of all time. Final Fantasy VI is my favorite Final Fantasy game. Yeah, it's a Doom 2 to me is still probably the best Doom game. It's a crazy year. It's a crazy year for games. Oh shit! Now I guess we're up to our top picks. Fuck. I was getting nervous then. All right, so for my pick for number one, and as I said, we don't know what each other's picking here. Is 1995. So kind of on the similar vein to Swinny, like I really wanted to pick a year that's more, 2D graphics, 16-bit era. I was actually kind of hoping something in the early 90s would resonate with me, but it didn't. Not saying that it won't with the guys. But yeah, look, 95, Chrono Trigger, regarded by a lot of people as their favorite game of all time. Earthbound came out in this year. Yoshi's Island, Diddy Kong's Quest, just absolute insane bangers from the start. And then you go through games that I have huge personal attachment to, stuff like Worms. Like Worms was just like, honestly, for me, maybe one of the most fun multiplayer in-person games you could play. Just, given the sort of turn-by-turn nature of it, and you're just thinking, shit, my character's about to die here. I've really fucked this up.
Not as good as Cute Basic Gorillas, but okay.
And then, you kind of go through like other, areas like, I'm a big fan of FGC, fighting game community, and just like fighting games. And you go, well, this is the year that, Killer Instinct really got its start, with the console releases. Tekken came out. Street Fighter Alpha series started in this year. It's just an absolute banger in terms of a year. And just, nice. I guess now that we're talking about our number ones, probably the biggest reason why I wanted to pick this year is, we've had this conversation before, but I look at, Earthbound is regarded as one of the best RPGs, and then Chrono Trigger as well. Yoshi's Island, Donkey Kong's Quest, like Donkey Kong Country 2, they're also regarded as some of the best platformers ever. I feel like I'm picking this year to go, fuck it. We have to decide not only what the better game are, like, Yoshi's Island versus Donkey Kong, Country 2, and then also Earthbound and Chrono Trigger. Out of those games, which is the best game? So I don't know. I just think to me, it's like dynamic. I like it. So yeah, that's mine. How about you, Mike? What's your number one pick?
My number one's pretty simple. It's 1997. I went well, I wouldn't say I went the safe route or anything like that, because it's actually as you pointed out, probably personally the biggest year in so many ways. I mean, Symphony of the Night, which I'm looking forward to playing properly, Final Fantasy VII, epic game, Diablo, what else did we talk about? Quake 2, GoldenEye, the original Fallout, which is one of my favorite games of all time, Harvest Moon, that started off an entire generation of games.
Yeah.
Blade Runner, which to this day is actually an amazing game, and I have a physical copy of it.
Yeah.
Grand Theft Auto, the original Grand Theft Auto, and come on, what that started is insane, absolutely
Which,
insane.
by the way, we're so old. Swinny, remember playing that back in school?
I remember modding that game. I remember creating my own cars and shit for it.
We were playing Grand Theft Auto on the school computer somehow.
I think we hacked it to make it work, which is so, like, we're so freaking old that people don't even know there's a Grand Theft Auto, like, 2D version.
Yeah. And look, to me that was the number one in terms of the how awesome the games were and how memorable for me they all were. Absolutely the number one year.
Nice.
Which worries me a little bit because if we're not picking it, oh my gosh, that's gonna be a 2011 kind of year for me trying to decide.
Oh, and these years are really good years.
Yeah.
All right, Swinny.
Number uno.
I feel like Swinny could be almost like decider. If he says 97, I feel like it's gonna be anticlimactic again.
Okay,
It won't be.
my number one pick is 1997.
Is it really? Is it
No,
really?
it's not.
Oh, come on, stop it.
I had it as 97. What is it? Wait, what's the year? Did you say the year? I didn't hear it.
My number one year is 1995.
That's so funny. We picked almost the exact same thing again.
Yep. So the reason why I chose 1995 and not 96, I'm sorry, Jives. They're all great years. 95 to me was the tail end of my favorite generation, the 16-bit generation. It was like the swan song. We've talked about those games, right? Chrono Trigger, Yoshi's Island, Diddy Kong's Quest. These were like the games that were showing. This was like, hey, you love the Super Nintendo especially? It's like, here's the best of the best this year. And I like what you said, Integot. What's better, Yoshi's Island or Donkey Kong Country 2? We've probably had that battle since we've known each other for all these years. And if we choose 95 as our next game of some other year, we're going to have to battle those two because I'm telling you now, those two are going to be in our 6 or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to come to a head. So 95 is the year for me.
I find it so funny that we picked the exact same year as our top year again. But we're in an interesting predicament because Mike didn't pick 95 at all. What was your fourth pick?
Well, 95 was my fourth pick.
Okay. Well, you shouldn't have disclosed that.
Yeah, 96 and 95.
You should have put a Swinny and lied and tricked.
I should have lied. Yeah. Oh, it was 1990.
It was 99, man. Dreamcast, baby.
Yeah, bro.
It's a bit, I said the wrong year last year, so.
Look, well, see, this is an interesting one because I feel like 1995 purely because you both had it as your number one. Probably overrides anything, I would say, to be honest.
No,
I don't see how I could possibly.
We had 97 as number one. I had 97 as number two.
Yeah, but that's nowhere near as good as having two number ones. So
true, yeah, and Swinny hasn't got 97.
Like if you put a weighting on it and you go, number one position gives you 3 points, number two position gives you 2 points, number three position gives you 1 point, and then you add up the totals.
This is real compelling tape right now.
you will get it. Okay, so 1997.
I've just got it on the chalkboard right now.
Okay. So
I know the maths of it, but it's not about
so you'll
the maths.
get 5 points out of number
I know that.
1997.
I know
what
that.
are we going to get out of 1998?
By the way,
1, 2 points, 4 points, 3. Okay, 1 point.
All
for
right,
I know, Mike. Shut up.
I have no issue
out.
whatsoever if we actually go with 97.
No, I'm also very open to whatever. Like,
yeah, but I feel like because you guys are passionate about 1995, it is mathematically the best one.
The guy that doesn't have 1995 is trying to argue for 99.
I know. That's what I'm thinking as well.
I'm cool. Look, I don't know. In your heart, Integot, what do you feel?
I think like the easiest way to look at it is just eliminate stuff, right? So what can we eliminate? Like that's like just working through it, right? Like I feel like we eliminate 94, yeah?
It's between these 2 years.
Yeah.
Like let's eliminate everything else.
Easy. So it's 95 or 97.
Yeah.
Pretty
So
much,
let's stack it up, right? The pros and cons. I think the pro of 97 actually is if I'm looking at a top 6, and I feel like we should still do a top 6, but let's just imagine because we did top 6 last time. So top 6. I feel like Diablo, Final Fantasy 7, and Symphony of the Night all are in that top 6, right?
And Fallout for me. Easily
no, not automatic.
Oh, but
I'm just saying the automatic ones.
So it's Fallout automatically.
I would back Mike this up, but I have to do a full playthrough.
No, but let's just say automatic ones.
Oh, easily automatic. We're all saying Fallout.
No, but I know. I'm saying
Mike would argue to the death.
I will argue to the death.
I'm saying ones we all say would be
game of the year for 1997.
I'll reframe it, Mike, so you can understand. These 3 games are all in our top 6, personal top 6. Let's say it like that.
Yeah.
Symphony of the Night, Final Fantasy 7, and Diablo. Is that right?
No, because
Top
I never
six?
really played Symphony
Diablo
of the Night, so
wouldn't
it's not my
probably
top
be mine.
6.
Oh, really?
So-
Oh, fuck me.
And then it won't be for him. So yeah,
Anyway.
I don't think this is going to be an agreement.
You
on that.
assholes
Yeah.
have totally ruined the point that I'm trying to make, which is one thing that I think is hugely in 97's favor is the games are really different. Symphony of the Night, Metroidvania, Final Fantasy 7, RPG,
Yeah,
Diablo,
lots of
CRPG,
RPGs to some extent,
but racing
still,
games,
yeah.
multiplayer
Racing,
games, like
yeah.
you've got kind of everything, like first-person shooters, and they're all like some of the best. Like Blade Runner is like an insanely cool game. Like I just think one thing that is massively in 97's favor is the games, the dynamic nature of the games themselves is so different. Whereas 95, to me, like, you know, it really is like
fighting game.
platformers versus RPGs fundamentally.
Versus fighting games.
Oh,
Because you
yeah,
got
fighting
Killer
games.
Instinct in Street Fighter.
Yeah.
I just can't see a fighting game being the number one though, personally.
No, neither.
Right?
I don't know. I
no,
don't know.
probably not. But
Well, I mean, the
doubt
fact that Mike and I say probably not, I don't think you're going to overrule us.
But I'm saying
Who
that's
knows?
not what we're talking about now.
I'm because again, it's not what the best year is. Because I think if the best year, we'd all pick. Well, you know, 98 would have been picked. I think.
I don't want to judge this based on the potential mix of what the top 6 could be.
I think that's important. I think that's an interesting thing because, you know, you want it to be interesting, right? So,
No, I just want to talk about games I like. That's all.
well, you don't like the Symphony of the Night, Final Fantasy 7?
But I'm saying that's what I don't care. I don't care which one we go with. I
You
just
don't like
want to
Blast
talk about games I
Corps?
like.
Parappa the Rapper? Okay. Oh, 95, 97. So what do you guys, like, what do you think, Swinny?
It's up to you guys. You know my number one, so.
The reason I think we go for 1995, I think at the end of the day, we had 2 people rank it as our number one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now Integot's like,
Well, I had 95 and 97 in my top 2, right? Like, it was kind of pretty close. And you're saying 97, Mike? After all, everything?
That's totally up to you now.
Damn. I'm not usually the deciding
No
vote.
pressure.
You guys usually go against me with these things.
Hey, 97 was apparently Curse of Monkey Island, which is an amazing game.
Oh, damn. Another one. Holy moly. Apollo Diablo will be very angry if you...
Yeah, El Bolo Diablo.
It's actually hard because you know Diddy Kong Racing is one of my favorite games of all time.
All right, how about this? I'll just make the decision.
Okay, you're just going to go 95.
We go with 1997.
What? Like, so look at this asshole. The one time I have the casting vote, he's like, "Fuck this! I'm gonna like fuck this."
You're not
guy's day
getting your
up.
vote.
How do you have the
don't get to
casting vote?
choose.
He goes, "How do I have casting votes?" Swinny said 95, Mike said 97, and then I haven't said one yet. And he's like, "How do you have a casting vote?"
Cast it for you.
I got to go with 95 because I got to decide like with the Diddy Kong
Yeah, but
stuff and
Swinny just
Yoshi's
said
Island.
97.
No,
so.
he's trying to trick me, but he's pretending to trick me. But
Okay, so 95 is
I'm
it?
genuinely going with what I think it should be, which is what I said at the
we can
start.
revisit 97 at a later time.
So wait, so where did we land on? I'm saying 95. Mike said 97 still. Swinny, what are you saying?
I'm saying 97.
Are you actually switching? Is he actually switching for legit?
Sorry, I got water. I'm drinking water. One consideration.
So I'm just going to say this guy's an absolute idiot because he doesn't even have 97 in his top 3.
Wait. One consideration we have to think about, and I know we shouldn't, is accessibility to actually play
that's
all these
bullshit.
games.
That's bullshit.
Well, no, it is because I don't really want to play it on an
bullshit.
emulator or something. I want to play
Bullshit.
the game on some...
Because,
proper
for
method.
instance, like Star Fox 64 or Lilac Wars, right? I don't have access to play that game, right? Now, I could talk about that game, but there's Wild Arms, right? You know, like the accessibility of 16-bit emulation is way easier than, to me, the others. So I think that is a consideration. There's a bunch of games. I just think it's going to be easy to play all the games in 95. But I'm cool with 97, man.
I reckon it's easier to play 97, personally.
No, God,
They're
no.
all
That's
available
ridiculous.
somewhere.
No, that's ridiculous, dude. Like,
You reckon it's not?
Swinny's point's 100% correct that
but
it
hang on.
is
Okay,
easier,
hang
but
on.
it's
Symphony
not.
of the Night
It shouldn't
easy.
be a determining
Final
factor.
Fantasy easy. Diablo easy. Diddy Kong Racing. Okay. Star Fox
dude.
maybe not. Quake 2
Dude, all the games
easy.
are 95. I could freaking run on my bloody calculator on my toaster.
Integot. I'm not saying it's a determining factor. I'm just trying to find like reasons why we'd choose one over the other.
I just feel like that shouldn't be a consideration. I think that's so unfair for like the year to me. I understand what you're saying. 100% understand. Like, it's
Like
way easier.
Mischief Makers, like playing Mischief Makers probably on a 64 emulation is probably play like
All
crap.
right, you know what? 1995, I've decided on both of the old behalf.
This is awesome.
So you can
All
shut the hell
so
up.
it's 95. We've landed on 95. I love it. So Mike didn't have 95 and he's picked 95. Swinny didn't have 97. He's picked 97. And the man that was consistent, me, 95. So 95 is the year.
It's about this time that I say that I actually wanted 1995.
Actually,
Yeah, sure. I don't blame you anymore. I don't blame you anymore. All right, so we're doing 95. So what is next is we've got to pick our top 6 for next week. So as painful as this has been, it's going to be doubly painful for...
It's going to be rough next week.
Yeah. And the other thing that we need to do is a bit of an exercise of just triple checking and, I think some of them is going to be really simple. Like this was when the Western release was, but some of them we need to all agree, like, is it in 95 or not?
My top 6 for 95 are pretty damn easy though. So
yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, I don't think there's anything else to add to it. No?
No, I think that's it. And I'm looking forward to playing some of these games again.
Awesome. So that wraps the show up for this week. Just as a reminder, catch Swinny and I as we do a live stream of the Sakurai presentation for Kazuya. So that's on Monday, the 28th, just actually like a day after this goes live. So you better catch it really quickly. It's 7 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. Eastern time in the States, 3 p.m. London time, and then midnight for us in Sydney and Melbourne. But with that, bye-bye.
See ya.
Ciao.